I thought you were running. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the June 19th regular meeting of council. The city of Parksville recognizes the people of the Coast Salish Nations and their traditional territory upon which we gather with gratitude. As a reminder, the next Dance With Me Memorial will be held this Thursday, June 22nd. The line dance events was well received, and we look forward to hosting again. This time it will be hip hop. So we're looking forward to that one. So information on all other city hosted events may be found on the Let's Talk Parksville if you want further details. Moving along, I would like to propose the consent agenda for this council meeting. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? That there is an addition under the agenda here, so that the consent agenda include the following recommendations be approved. That the minutes of the public hearing held June 5th, 2023 be adopted. That the minutes of the council meeting held June 5th, 2023 be adopted. New addition is on point C, that an additional agenda item for today of special business be added to the council meeting agenda as item 8, and the subsequent agenda item be renumbered accordingly. And D, that the June 19th, 2023 council meeting agenda be approved as amended. I have a mover and seconder, moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gower. Are there any errors or omissions? Councillor, I just want to say Adam Frass. Sorry.
Thank you. Just wanted to, what was the addition there? I don't have it noted on my agenda.
Yes, the addition was a discussion about security and safety of the Memorial Plaza location.
And where is that coming under? But in open meeting at the end?
An open meeting, yes, an open meeting at the end.
Thank
yes.
you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other errors or omissions or discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you. Delegations, we have one delegation today. Speaking today, we have Island Health regarding the zoning amendment application at 188 McCarter Street. Presentation today by S. Ledbetter and L. Howley and E. Driver of Island Health regarding the zoning amendment application at 188 McCarter Street. Please provide up to the microphone, and you want to bring a chair or you want to do it singly or however works best for you. Thank you very much and welcome. Not quite yet. If you just do a test 1, 2, 3, that'd be great.
Test 1, 2, 3.
Loud and clear. Thank you.
Hello and good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Driver, and I'm the manager for mental health and substance use services in Parksville. And it is my pleasure to be here today with Leslie Howie as Director of Mental Health Substance Use Services, Sheila Ledbetter, our Executive Director for Mental Health Substance Use Services, and Dr. Roger Wamsley, Addictions Medicine Lead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council, for this opportunity to present. Island Health is seeking the rezoning of Elizabeth Manor to open a 19-bed addictions treatment facility. This treatment center responds to the rising mental health and substance use challenges in our communities and the need for abstinence-based treatment services. The center will support individuals from addiction into recovery, providing support groups, therapeutic counseling, psychoeducation, relapse prevention, and other activities to support participants' well-being. Alcohol and substance use remain one of the leading causes of death across BC. Since the pandemic, there has been a rising occurrence of mental health and substance use challenges in our communities. There is a lack of abstinence-based treatment centers on Vancouver Island. Currently, Island Health has only one other abstinence-based treatment center in Victoria with 6 beds dedicated to individuals identifying as women. This does not meet the needs of our population. In particular, we have a lack of closer to home options for residents of Centre and North Vancouver Island. Long wait times for existing services puts people at risk for overdose, death, and other negative impacts on their wellness, relationships, and society. The target population for this treatment center will be individuals experiencing challenges with substance use, with or without co-occurring mental health challenges. Will be for adults 19 and over on Vancouver Island of all genders who are wanting and willing to participate in treatment. In order to be admitted, you would need to be medically stable. Some of the exclusion criteria for admission would include individuals without the cognitive ability to participate in programming, such as Alzheimer's or dementia, individuals with unstable medical conditions, involuntary admissions to service, and individuals who pose a risk to themselves and others. To provide a service overview, again, this will be a 19-bed treatment center, a voluntary service for adults 19 and over of all genders who are Vancouver Island residents, providing a 90-day abstinence-based program. Admissions are determined by the Island Health Access and Screening Committee. Upon program completion, individuals are reconnected to local Island Health teams, community resources, and housing in their home community. Arrangements will be made for transportation to and from the facility. As a staffing overview, there will be on-site leadership and administration, physician oversight, including addictions medicine and psychiatry, 24/7 nursing and addiction recovery support workers. The multidisciplinary team includes clinical counselors, dietitian, psychologist, Indigenous and peer support workers, occupational therapist, clinical nurse educator. There will be support staff, including cooks and housekeeping, and an on-site elder. Some of the benefits to the Parksville community include providing well-paid employment opportunities, adding to healthcare services closer to home, expanding abstinence-based treatment, responding to the high need for services due to increasing substance use and mental health challenges, occupying and staffing the building 24/7, reducing the risk for break-ins and vandalism. Island Health is committed to building and maintaining good relationships with neighbors. Island Health is committed to transparency and accountability with the Parksville community and immediate neighbors. Engagement opportunities include open houses, open and honest communication and meetings, and town halls. If the rezoning is approved, Island Health is wanting and willing to develop a good neighbor process in a manner preferred by the local community to help foster relationship building and a supportive community environment. Thank you. And I think we can now open up for
Yes.
questions.
Yes, thanks very much for your presentation. Do any of the other people, are they going to do a follow-up presentation? What do you have, or is that your presentation?
That's the presentation.
Yeah, I didn't want to leave anybody out here. So that's good. Thank you very much for your time. Council, you heard the presentation. Questions, please. Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for delegation to coming before us. There's definitely a need for treatment in our community. Yes. I do have some questions about your proposal. First of all, I want to know how long is your lease going to be with the owners of the building? And the second, I want to know, staffing is a big issue. I work in healthcare myself, and you're proposing a 24/7 facility with nurses, medical practitioners, and other support staff. From personal experience, I know it's really difficult to hire people, and we are looking at a 24/7 staffing plan. What do you think? How do you think you will be able to staff this? And because this can be very critical for the safety of other staff members, the residents, the vulnerable people, and our community at large? Thank you.
Thank you for those questions. I'll talk about the staffing piece first. So I agree, staffing is, is challenging everywhere, whether it's on the island or off the island. What we do know that is in central region or this area, we have a lot of movement of staff. So lots of staff that go over Port Alberni, go up to Courtenay. So a lot of our staff as a bigger group, they shift from community to community. So we're anticipating some of that, but we also know that people will come to Centre Island from the mainland. And we've been able to recruit from other areas for folks to move here. And I notice all the development that's happening here. And I think it's part of a pattern that we likely will be successful in recruiting who we need. And the other piece of that is that it will be kind of a phased, we're not going to look for our 27 staff to start on day one, but we'll probably start and recruit a smaller group and then a bigger group and do it in a phased way so that we can get up to capacity while we establish the service. I don't have the answer about the leads. Come down and talk.
Hello, my name is Kevin Daniel. I'm manager of capital planning for Island Health. Typically, a facility of this nature, the lease term is from at least minimum 10 years up to about 20 years. So 10 to 20 years, also usually with options to renew or extend further after that.
Follow up, or are you good? Okay, other council members' questions? Good. Councillor Beal.
Sorry. What did I? Thank you. Is that working now? Okay. Yeah, I would like to thank you for your presentation today, but also for the extensive documentation that was sent along to us that we received in the agenda package. I believe it's 36 pages. So there was a lot of detail. I jokingly said to someone earlier that it seems like everything is there except the color that you're going to paint the rooms. I mean, not quite, but I do hope that for the benefit of the audience here, that everyone is able to have a good look and read through that document, because it does seem like you've thought of and addressed many, many questions and, and concerns that people might have in the area. So I just wanted to bring that up in case people don't have that with their little packages that they have here. People can go online and look at the agenda and find that full report addressing so many questions. I guess one thing I do have is just a thought. There's a mention of a good neighbor agreement, that sort of thing. So how do you, presumably you've done some of these in other areas, and I just wondered, again, for the benefit of all of us, if you could describe some of the things that might go into a good neighbor agreement.
Yeah, I think we have example or places where we do this with the community partners. So it's things like, we've talked a bit about the building being staffed 24/7, but making sure that the neighbors have a source of contact. So a phone number, someone that's available to talk them through if there are any concerns. We do the process around inviting people in to come and see the facility before it starts, having those kind of connections with the community as we're moving forward from if we get to rezone and then we're about to start. So, we will have also increased monitoring and video security, and that will hopefully reassure the neighbors. I think you have other partners in community who already have community advisory groups. So we would look to either partnering or setting up one for this site. Just making sure that the communication is there, but most of it is around that direct contact and then the kind of timeframes on response to get back to people, and then having those open forums of discussion for people to bring concerns as they move forward.
Yeah, follow up, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And I'm also curious to know, I got the sense from reading through the full report that that there will need to be either minor or more extensive renovations done to the building as it is right now. And so I guess I'm curious, if there is a green light, understanding that there's quite a process to go through. But, you know, if at the end of it all, there is a green light to go ahead, what sort of a time frame would you expect for, you know, completion and doing renovations for that initial phase startup?
To open doors. To opening the doors. Oh, that's like the $1 million question. I think that, you know, from green light, then there's a process in terms of initial kind of scopes and things have been done. And again, you know, Kevin can jump in and probably say, don't say that. I mean, I would estimate green light. I think that's a good kind of healthy timeline. It will probably take, you know, we have programming to build and staff to onboard, but really for renovations to get people in and get them done. There won't be really renovations to the outside of the building. It should look pretty much the same. A few new cameras and probably some paint. But it's inside to kind of shift the space into a more kind of update it and make it a more of a suitable environment for our clients. So a year. Yeah.
Councillor Martin.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, I got the wrong one. The communication with the people, the community, the counselors. So what would a town hall entail? Because you did mention it, and I thought that seemed like a good possibility.
That's tricky. I think it would be, we have communications advisors who would then advise us how to communicate out, but certainly, you know, we would publicize it, make sure the neighborhood was aware. You know, we can connect with our partners in community individually or our closest neighbors. Like once, now this is, you know, public and on the agenda, that process will start for us to just make sure we're connected with our partners. But I think making sure the communications right at the start is good, like come along, we're going to do this, you know, is key to that. And then we would bring likely similar people that are here today. Yes, absolutely, Roger. And then start the conversation with that.
Just to answer that, we've had one town hall in the Nanaimo area. I'm Dr. Walmsley, sorry.
Yes.
Dr. Roger Walmsley, Island Lead.
Thank you, sir. If you could go to the
The mic.
microphone, many people watch online and so forth. And if you're not near the microphone, they just don't hear anything. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm Dr. Roger Walmsley, the Central Island Lead for Addiction Medicine. We've had one town hall with addiction medicine in Nanaimo, and what our focus there is to try and help understand the community narrative around addictions, around issues that affect the population. So we bring together a variety of the community partners, police, bylaw, council members, addiction medicine physicians, peer support leaders, et cetera, and people. And so the idea of that is to discuss at a level where people can start to understand some of the issues that are at play. And it really provides an opportunity for questions to really get a much better understanding of how they affect on the community.
Right. Thank you, Doctor. What my concern was is this 36 pages or whatever we got, you know, the package we got is a lot of information. And I think the public don't necessarily read all this, and there's all this misconceptions. And like you say, the people are explaining this. So that was what I was curious about. So thank you very much.
And just to add to that, we have a really nice, because I also have to shuffle through the paper, but we have, you know, we have things like if it's one page, we could do it verbally, we could put out, you know, things like much shorter information. I think for this meeting, let's bring everything we have. So yeah, we definitely look at how we communicate to make sure people understand and there isn't that sense of having to read through 36 pages. Yeah, for sure.
There's misconceptions and there's anxiety over this sort of idea, you know, because
Yes.
we haven't had that before. So
Yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you.
I'm curious as to the misconceptions. Oh,
What happens is people talk and they give you part of their
Yes.
thoughts. You don't get the whole picture from the people who know what they're doing.
right.
We as counselors don't know all about this. The
Yeah.
citizens don't know all about this.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Grants.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to our delegation. First of all, thank you very much for the work you do and coming today to speak with us about this project. Without a doubt, addiction and mental health issues are a supreme struggle of our time. And so anything we can do to help folks that are struggling with these challenges is important. So on that thread, my question is, given the demand for this sort of service, could you provide some more detail around how your triage process will go in your scoring system? And does that system involve looking at the likelihood of success of the program, and what does success look like for an individual as well? If you can speak to that. I do have other questions, but start with that.
So we do have, I'll start off. We do have a regional committee that Elizabeth referred to that currently does a very similar process for the regional beds in Victoria. And that does look at, would pull together all the information for the person. So from their local MHSU team or anyone that they're connected with, there would be assessments done around suitability, vulnerabilities, readiness, and then an agreement set up, with the individual who was coming around, making sure they understand that this is a substance-free facility, that they're coming to treatment, and that they, that whole process of their ability to come from the home community or to come into treatment would definitely be assessed at that time. And then there would be follow-ups for them afterwards as we go along to assess how successful they are. But the assessment process would be ongoing around on a daily basis, right, of how people are coping and functioning and moving towards along their treatment continuum. Did I miss things? Or did I miss things?
The question was about sort of prioritization or
Yeah.
screening. There is a screening committee that meets regularly and reviews all of the referrals, and people are screened, thoroughly in terms of physical health conditions and priority around the substances they're using, what kinds of care needs do they have, and then there's a continuum of services that we would look at matching someone up. And so there's a number of people that sit on that committee regionally across the island from South Island, and are really just assessing individual care needs and which facilities, are best fit. And currently, people even on an urgent wait list for treatment are often waiting for months and have to go off island to access this level of care.
I think the other piece is that we have a range of services on the island, depending on how ready people are to come into treatment. So we have other facilities that are supportive, or that, meet people where they're at. And this is kind of the missing piece for us. So there are criteria in terms of how people are able to come in and access, and what would exclude them from accessing this service particularly. So it's a piece of the range of services. Like, this is not a low barrier access service. This is a service that people will demonstrate that they're ready to come to, and then they'll be triaged in.
I'll just mention one other piece of that is that we have Clearview Detox, which you're probably familiar with in Nanaimo. This is a facility that gives us 5 to 7 days of treatment, sometimes a little bit longer, to get people abstinent, to get them through the initial phase of addiction withdrawal. The challenge we've had constantly is that we do not have a lot of subsequent treatment programs. That gets us through the withdrawal phase. What we really need on this island is more treatment after that fact. This is a big gap. This is where a lot of our clients, they end up going back into the street, into the community. They don't have that support. The beauty of this is that it is a multi-team. There are multi-participant members on this that form a comprehensive team of care. That is the proven and very necessary ingredient in terms of any form of rehab. As you know, the second leading cause of preventable death is alcohol, and the most lost years of life is in the opioid crisis. These are the two most significant addiction-related issues on this island, and there's a tremendous need for us to move forward in those areas.
Thank you. And I'll circle back, Councillor Grenz, if you have more. If for first timers, we'll go to Councillor Franz.
Thank you. Through the mayor to delegation, Elizabeth and Leslie, thank you for coming to present today. Appreciate the chance to get to hear from you and ask questions. I was quick to raise my hand when item came up about misconceptions, because I think you mentioned that there's only 6 beds comparable at a treatment center in Victoria. There's not a lot of information that people know about it, so I think they don't have a great example of what to expect out of it. Some of the things that come up I've heard is people comparing to things like Logan Lake and Kamloops. I don't know if you're aware of the Logan Lake addiction treatment there. No, okay. So one of the questions I'll ask then too, I think it's a little bit maybe reading between the lines, but when you talk about voluntary access to this treatment, would that include people that would be as a plan to people that are avoiding incarceration by coming to a voluntary treatment program?
What I would say to that is that in order to be referred and admitted into the facility, you absolutely need to be voluntary. And so anyone that's court mandated into treatment, those referrals would be in the excluded
Okay, so
criteria.
so it's not anyone with criminal convictions that are voluntarily doing this instead of incarceration?
Because I believe that would be mandated treatment, right? Either this or this. And
Yes.
so it's not voluntary for them because the alternative is to go to prison. So the answer would be no.
Okay, it's great to have an answer on that. Logan Lake, for example, is one where
Oh,
it
okay.
seems to be that's the case. So when people are looking at comparables,
Right.
and that's what they have to lean on, I think that's where some
Yeah.
assumptions get made in that. You mentioned it's 19 beds, about 10 years that the lease will be going on for. My quick math is around 60 to 75 people per year that you'd be looking to bring through treatment in Parksville. Is that correct?
My math
I-
isn't
I-
that quick.
Yeah.
I think so. I think it comes
Yeah.
out to about
I think
up 90 days over the
Yeah.
year, so on. What kind of success rate do you find in those 6 beds in Victoria as far as completion? Like what's
So the
dropout
6,
rate?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. They were very early, so that center's only been open, I think, since November. On top.
Hi, everyone. Sheila Ledbetter. We first started taking clients on December 28th. So with the 90-day program, we have 3 graduates.
Yeah.
And they're all doing really well. There was a couple that people that left after 30 days, it wasn't the right place for them. And that does happen. But out of the 6 beds right now, we've got 6 women that are in the program right now, but 3 graduates.
Fair enough. I didn't realize it was only started so recently though, too. I wasn't aware of that. What is the geographical reach then? Is it just an island-based treatment center? It's not from British Columbia, like provincially coming to here then too?
This treatment center would be for Vancouver Island residents. Yeah.
Am I able to, like some of these questions are all connected, but I realize I got lots of questions too, so I'll pass it around.
Yeah. Thanks, Councillor Franz. I'll circle back, for the first timers, if I can. So Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the presentation. Really appreciate the opportunity. I feel flattered that Parksville has been chosen for this. I think we see a lot of problems across the island, across the province, and across the entire country. And there's a huge void in recovery services. And I personally am flattered that we get to discuss this and move through this process. Speaking of the Victoria service that has been open since, I guess, November, how is that facility working with the surrounding neighborhood?
It's going fine. It's literally a house on a crescent. And you wouldn't even know. It's just like a family living there.
Sure. Thank you. Follow-up? Sure.
One
follow-up. Now, this is way beyond obviously my expertise, but why is 90-day chosen for treatment instead of 30, 60, 120? Is that kind of an optimal time to offer these services? Thank you.
I think the easiest answer to that is that 90 is tolerable. I think after a period of 90 days of rehab, most of our clients are feeling that they have had sufficient exposure. They've been through some intensive some intensive rehab, group therapy, et cetera, and that can be wearing over time. There's no silver bullet in terms of knowing what the magic number is. And often people end up having to go through 1 or 2 treatment programs. There's no reason to say that if someone goes through 90 days, that given a period of time, they might need further treatment. But then as I think was mentioned in your circular, there's ongoing aftercare. The idea of any treatment program like this, and there are a couple of other private established programs on the island, they offer extensive aftercare, and the intent would be we would continue our relationship with these clients in a way that would be supportive.
Thank you. I think everyone's had a turn out. I'll just have a couple of questions, if I may, at this time. Regarding the location of Parksville, Councillor Wood has mentioned he's flattered. I'm not sure to say flattered. I would say I'm curious. Why Parksville? Why is the chosen location here? You mentioned that you have another facility of the same 90-day program, somewhat a pilot program, I would expect it is right now in Victoria. You have 6 beds in Victoria. You're proposing 19 beds in Parksville. Why Parksville? And it appears that, to me, that it would be better in a location that has more potential clients, like coming from that very community, the larger community where I'm referring to, of course, is Nanaimo, which is the mayor thinks that that's the hub of Nanaimo, thinks that's the hub of Vancouver Island, and maybe so, but they definitely have a larger population. They have a larger people with mental and health addiction issues. So I'm really curious as to why that wouldn't be a better fit, knowing that reading your background, it had a lot of during the latter days of their support system in the 60 days, they're relying heavily on family support, family and friend support. And to me, if that family and friends were located right beside the location, it would make it a better chance of success. So here we are. Why Parksville?
So I will try and answer some of that. And I think probably every one of us that's in the room could talk about why we're in this place now. I think that there was an extensive process following the funding coming from the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions to find a location and set up a service in Centre North Island. So it was designated, and Sheila can jump in because I may not get the order right. So it was designated to be sited in the Centre North Island by the Ministry of Mental Health. And so at that time, we go through processes for requests for proposals to find a leased site that was suitable. We went through that process twice with nothing suitable coming forward. And then we had the opportunity to repurpose a building that we already had to provide the 6 women-only beds. And we had that building in Victoria. So it was, let's go with this, because we were struggling to find a suitable location that was accessible, that was kind of mid-island. And then our real estate team then got involved and started to work with, and Kevin could talk to that, in places in the Centre North Island to actually start to go through leasable real estate options. And Elizabeth Manor was there as available to lease, and it had 19 beds, which was a gift in many ways. And it is accessible here. This is a regional island-wide centre. So, there are centres of bigger population, but what we do know is that, all referrals will go to this committee, and this is an area where people can come to. And the building was there. So it's like many things that kind of came together after a long process of searching on behalf of the health authority. Want to add anything?
For sure. No, you nailed it, Leslie. And I would just say that it's also a very home-like setting. It's a healing setting. I mean, you walk in there and it's like, it doesn't look like an institution. And again, with some further tenant improvements, it'll be a really nice environment for people to go through treatment.
Thank you. I understand that now. I have one other question that will go back to the council. I understand that it's a rezoning you're looking for to make this happen, and it's turning, and the rezoning is it actually says an addiction treatment center. But are you willing to put through a covenant to advise that it is an addiction treatment center as to the 90-day program? It's not going to be a full-on addiction treatment center or open drug use, permitted, like a shooting site as they're known, to ensure that it stays as this program and not a full-on addiction treatment center.
Absolutely. It'll never be a place where we do harm reduction or supervised consumption. It
Right.
will, absolutely, it'll be a treatment center.
With covenant in place to make sure that doesn't ever revert back. I know you're all
Right.
here now, but the thing is that people change, the faces change, and management changes as well, and so does direction.
Yeah.
And it's a very short walk from what you're proposing to full-on treatment, so that I'm concerned about that. So a covenant in place would prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that is likely hopefully is reassuring is that the text amendment is around the licensing language. So this site will be licensed, which will allow us to fit the zoning that's already on there. And it's adding that ability to have mental health treatment and substance use treatment there. And this kind of sites that you're talking about would not be licensed. So as soon as it became an unlicensed activity, the zoning wouldn't fit, so it wouldn't occur there. So I think there's probably a number of safeguards, and licensing is the biggest one. Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, I'll go back to Councillor Grants.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you also for your patience with our questions. This is obviously some of the topics have been already raised here, so maybe move on to another question here. First, I'll follow up on my previous one. Could you speak a little bit to what success looks like for an individual? And then can we expand that out to what specific metrics we can look to at a community level to judge whether this is successfully fitting into the community versus not, and how we improve that? So I'm talking like specific metrics that we can look at so we can judge that. Thank you.
Success for individuals, I think that definitely, the need for this kind of treatment program is that people's substance use becomes problematic to them maintaining their daily lives and jobs and families. And so that individual measures of success will be just that, because the intention is that, because there are many, many people who use substances that we don't ever see or treat. Right. But for some people, that substance use becomes to a place where it starts to impact and threaten their ability to maintain their daily lives. And so the measure of success would be that, to return to daily life, or and resume your working life and your family, or to get a job and start to build security on the outside. And we would have follow-ups. These individuals are not going to disconnect from the local community. So if they come from Victoria, they will return to their supports in Victoria and then continue on their lives. Some people may not actually be needing of, traditional mental health supports, but they will be connected to services and will go back and maintain the things that they've learned. So those individual measures of success, I think, are difficult to talk about, but it's about people returning to a life that's sustainable and fulfilling for them. Metrics of success for the community. I think in the engagement, the community can determine those metrics. So lack of complaints is always a good one. We will monitor the phone calls, any incidents that there are, the engagements that we have with community and the feedback from community. And we could definitely determine those metrics as we're going into those early town halls and engagements. Is let's do it again and let's see how the community is feeding back to us now. Yeah. Anything else about metrics? Or I would see it being a community-based process.
Very good. Yeah, okay.
I thought a delegation.
Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And again, yes, thank you for your patience and your willingness to share your knowledge and experience with us. I'm just picking up on a question that our mayor asked about, would a treatment center ever include like a harm reduction, safe consumption site? Like those seem to be at odds in my mind, especially what I've read as being described here, but
Yes.
is that ever the case? I mean, I have no objection to if there's a covenant
Yeah.
that would not be included, but does that ever occur?
I don't think so. Like harm, it's part of that span of services and they're quite separate.
This is an abstinence-based program. That's how it's spelled out, and there with abstinence, that at this stage does not include the typical things like safe supply that we're talking about, we're seeing in the streets, OPS, harm reduction measures at this stage. I think the important piece here is that we know that the success comes with team support that's very comprehensive, psychologic, dietary, help with professional advice, mental health advice, and there's all those teams in this. That is where this will make a difference. It's not with providing harm reduction, safe supply, or OPS. That's not the focus of this. This is an abstinence-based program.
Thank you. Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, through you to the delegation, and I want to take the opportunity to even encourage the public here and also those watching online to go through this document that Island Health has provided. I'm very sure it will answer a lot of your questions. A lot of your concerns will be addressed. But if anybody has questions, yeah, please send an email to council. And my question to the delegation is, and it has been brought before that we are looking at female-only facility in Victoria to compare with to a 19-bed facility in Parksville. We are still a small city, comparatively speaking, like we are. Do you anticipate any increase in calls for, let's say, the police or the bylaw or any of those services? Because eventually those calls do fall back on the taxpayers and that Parksville has to end up paying for. Do you anticipate those? And second, there's definitely a need for treatment for the people in Oceanside. Definitely, we have a lot of folks dealing with that are visible out on the streets, and but also the people at homes we don't see. So would there be a priority, let's say, given to the Oceanside residents rather than it's first come, first served? My question, thank you.
So I think in general, we wouldn't anticipate that spike or increase coming with this center. You know, if we think about the exclusions that Elizabeth talked about people's capacity, chronic medical conditions, willingness to come to treatment, that they're really in the early days of the program, probably the first 2 to 3 weeks, folks will not be leaving, right? And then they will be accompanied by staff, and then they may be accompanied by another person who's further along in the program. So in terms of street traffic, it's not going to be more than, say, it was before when it was Elizabeth Manor. And because it's the same size facility, it will be staffed and really quite well staffed 24/7. There will be security systems, and we will also be engaged with some kind of mobile security system. If someone has a medical emergency, they have a medical emergency, and it's kind of an unfortunate thing that may happen for people, just as similar to how it was before, and perhaps even less likely as folks are a bit younger than those that were there perhaps before. So not anticipated. If there were concerns with bylaw or from the city or the police, we would have engagement with them from the start, and then hopefully we would work around whatever was causing the issue and start to resolve it internally from the building out. There won't be a priority for people from this area because they will go into a regional triaging system. Just like in Victoria, there isn't a prioritization for women who are in Victoria. The site will also serve women, but if they're vulnerable, they may be triaged more appropriately to the site in Victoria. So there wouldn't be in the system a way of kind of triaging, do they come locally? Right? Yeah. I mean, yeah, I'll talk to you afterwards, because sometimes what happens is if you're local, you're well known to the teams, and that may not that there's a priority in triaging, but your team is closer and very knowledgeable about the very wrapped around the center. So there's maybe a little bit of an effect there, but we actually kind of monitor these regional, because it is for the whole island. And I did just want to make a comment. I too am honored to be part of this process, because Vancouver Island has not had this level of treatment facility before. And it's really something that has been striven for many years. And for it to be potentially coming to fruition in my time here is something that, maybe I couldn't have imagined a few years ago. So yeah, I share that sentiment. Thank you.
Councillor Frass. Thank you.
Thanks, through the mayor, to delegation. Also just, if you can be close to the microphone, sometimes it makes it easier for us to hear. Kind of touching on the last comment here, last question about the increase in calls, though, one of the, I think, situation that could arise is, I know treatment is a very popular thing. A lot of people have a hard time accessing treatment. Imagine there's a pretty big wait list with it. How do you make sure that the clients are, while they're on a wait list, aren't just sitting at the doorsteps out here, for their 90 days to pop up or camping out in our Memorial Plaza or in the Jensen Greenway Trail, hoping that maybe they're, going to get in.
So I think that's where it's the connection with their local team won't be broken. We don't really know, what we do know is we have a range of treatments, and that what happens is those treatments do end up with wait lists. There's been a lot of investment in different types of beds and services for people from Island Health, but also from the Ministry of Mental Health and Addiction, to get people to treatment as soon as they can. And that has kind of happened over the last year. There's been really quite concerted efforts to, in the absence of having a regional treatment center, securing beds for people elsewhere or with other services outside of Island Health. So people will remain wrapped around by their local teams, and transportation would be arranged at the time. So they would be clear, Monday's your day, I'm going to come and get you. You'll come with a support person and you'll come. If someone was of the misunderstanding that they could come and wait, then the staff, we would tackle that as a service and kind of explain to them and arrange for them to be transitioned where they needed to be, or to go back to their local teams.
How about people, though, without a team that's supporting them, if they're just individuals, hear about this, come into town?
Oh, and just come? Then we would need to, talk them through what the process is to get to services. So I think we would have capacity, from the center to do that, and then to connect them. If say someone just turned up from Victoria or Courtney, and said,
or anywhere, right?
Right.
That's
oh, I'm waiting here because this is treatment and I can get it, then that individual we would then connect with and get them to where they needed to be, which would be connection back to their local team, and not have them sitting on the doorstep in that way. I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand.
No, I mean, I did mean both
Yeah.
aspects of it too. I mean,
Go ahead.
yeah, because it does place a lot of trust on, teams from all the communities,
Yes.
not just what we hear from you guys here. And also, like I say, the people that are unsupported with teams too. Again, being on the voluntary program, if people are dropping out of the program, I know you mentioned here that they'll be transported back to their community, but
Yeah.
if they're not compliant with that, if they're, not willing to participate, or how do you deal in that sense? Like, then where do they go? They're out in the street. Like,
Yeah, it's difficult to address every single exception that may arise.
and I
I
guess
think-
where these questions come from too, though, is like the risk
Yeah.
is all on Parksville side of it, right? Like,
Yeah.
the benefit is we see some improvement all around the island. We
Yeah.
perhaps get a few local community members that are able to access treatment as well, perhaps.
Yep.
You know, not with a priority on there, but we carry all the risk of any outfall that comes out of it. So
Yeah.
you know, I know it's hard to tackle every angle, but we're
Yep.
concerned about every angle that
Yep.
goes on.
You know, people generally want to go back to their communities. So if, and I think the other thing to think about is that, you know, honestly, the majority of these people that come to the center will be paying mortgages, will have homes, will have jobs, will have families. They're not going to stay here. And so what I think you're talking about is that smaller, very visible population who may just say, you know, I'm not going back, right? I'm going to stay in Parksville. But for those people, their community, whether they have a home or they're, you know, structurally vulnerable or don't have a house, that's their community and they want to return to Courtney or Campbell River and we'll make sure they get there. The thing that may prevent them is the barrier of transport. Well, that's where we would step in and say, we've got to get you back.
Sure. And I don't want to be lost. I definitely do appreciate this type of treatment center and especially abstinence-based. For years, that's what I had been thinking has been, you know, what's been missing. And I didn't realize the large gap that we have, only 6 beds that recently came in fact.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know, I appreciate that this is coming forward in a sense. It is a concern to me though, too, like we don't have a hospital here.
Yeah.
There is places like Nanaimo that has a hospital as well. You know, there's other regions that I thought would have been more appropriate, maybe a higher success rate, especially since Nanaimo's been actually asking for this too. And, you know, we've been advocating for this type of thing to be happening, but I don't know so much asking for it to come right to town here.
Yeah.
So, you know, I do have a lot of thoughts on it too. I'll kind of wrap it up for today, I guess, though, as well, but
Yeah. And I think anyone, you know, we would be happy to talk individually and have these conversations more because it's important as a community as well as an individual to really think it through, right? And look at the bigger and then like you say, those details of, but what happens if. And
well, it's
certainly
that's
to
something that we've been dealing with quite a bit over the last couple of years too. Like you don't have to go very far to see the problems that we're having. I mean, even today, we're going to be having, it's on our agenda to be discussing these issues out on our streets.
What,
Appreciate that.
thank you, Councillor Frass. What I'd just like to suggest is that what we're hearing now is like our community is very being affected by the amount of mental health and addiction issues that are affecting us. But they're more of the individuals are transient.
Yes.
They're transient nature, and so they
Yeah.
don't have a team working for them, and they're coming and going, and they're actually more and more are coming, and they're affecting our community in a huge way. So part of us, you know, when we heard about your program, we're saying, oh, good, you know, someone
Yes.
is someone is
Yeah.
listening, someone is going to be able to pick up
Yeah.
these individuals because they need help. And not to lessen the impact of yours, but it appears that what your program is, you're going after the low hanging fruit at this particular case because there is a need. But the other part of it I see is still falling through gaps in the system, in the healthcare system, which inevitably it falls on you to provide other mental health and addiction treatment facilities. And I don't see that anywhere on the horizon yet. And that I'm disappointed at. But I do, you know, I applaud what you're doing and I know the individuals that you're targeting here and they absolutely need your assistance. And I think it's a great program, but I'm just afraid what's left on the street, you know, so forth. Because we have our emergency service are taxed to the max in between our fire and our police and our bylaw compliance. We're over the top. And so, and it falls on the taxpayers, but it also falls on the taxpayers and our business owners of the ripple effect, the consequences of having the individuals that are untreated in our community. So you are making a difference and I get it. And I thank you for that. I think it's a great program and I really do. It's just, you know, we're still, don't stop there. You know, we need more. We need more help from the health authorities throughout British Columbia to deal with this huge crisis we have.
Yeah. and
That's
I-
just,
For sure. And I wanted to mention though, that there is a gap that is being met, but again, it's the size. So there's the New Roads Therapeutic Recovery Center in Victoria. And I don't know if you know, it's by Victoria General Hospital. It used to be a youth detention center. And it's
Oh, I
a
know.
1-year long program. So often folks that come from corrections or folks that are living rough or
Right.
are homeless, that's a better fit for them because they have a longer time to, and it does take longer for them to get to a place where they can be successful. And they call it therapeutic because people that are kind of in the 8 to 9 month, they end up helping the people that are just entering the program. So there is that service that's available, but it's much longer.
Thank you. And just to confirm, that's called New Roads?
Yeah, new roads.
Yeah, at the old Youth Detention Center. Yeah, View Royal. Yeah.
That's right. And
Yeah.
it's regional. It's,
And how many beds is that?
well, they have 37 beds.
Right.
I think that right now there's probably 26 that are occupied.
Thank you. And how does an individual get referred to that agency?
Again, it's often through the mental health substance use community teams or at the hospitals,
Right.
like through
Yeah,
the addiction
yeah.
medicine
And
program.
that, yeah, and that's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a perfect referral there. Thank you, Councilor Bill.
Thank you very much. And I have a different sort of a question. It seems to me that having an influx, should this all go ahead, that having an influx of professional and paraprofessional health service workers would be a real benefit for our community, that these would be, like I say, more professional jobs and also presumably with better pay than, let's say, someone might get at the in the lower levels, if you like, of the hospitality industry or working in cafes. And I just wonder if you might speak to that as well. I just see that that could be a real plus for our community, and to have that here, I would also think on some level that this would be attractive to further building a community of health services in the area.
Yeah, yes, I would agree with that. I think that it's an opportunity, and it's a level of employment that does probably around about 30 staff in total, but those would all be kind of that professional level or health care worker level and administration level. It's a balance, right? Because we have human resource challenges but we want to bring people in. So yeah, I think that would be a benefit in the community that's growing in this way. What was the second part?
Well, I can't help but wonder, we're always needing more, especially primary healthcare providers. And I just wonder if we're known as a community that has a little bit more diversity in terms of healthcare services, that if that makes us a more attractive community for healthcare providers who might are looking for a location.
Yeah, that there would be a bit of a ripple effect to bring people in to support primary care.
Thank you. And council, I'm going to wind this up by 2 o'clock. If there's anybody else has a pressing question, nothing to that has already been touched on. Councilor Wood, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. I think you might hear some nervousness from council because there aren't a lot of these facilities that exist besides maybe the 6-bed in Victoria.
Yeah.
I think it would be a bright future if every community had one of these, and that way there is less nervousness because it's just something that each community has. But I want to encourage the minister and the ministry and all of her fantastic team for moving ahead in what I think is clearly an answer to a huge problem that we see across the island and the province and the country. Thank you.
Yes, and thanks. And for the public's knowledge here, this is just the very first step. Island Health has taken the initiative to come here and present as a delegation, which I'm very appreciative of, educating us because it's a very contentious issue and we're in a crisis situation here. So I do appreciate that. This is the very first step. You see later on in our agenda, we're looking for going to the first step, zoning amendment, which is the very first step in this long process that Island Health are embarking on right now. And so there'll be lots of opportunity at those second and third steps for the public to be engaged in. So if you have other questions as well, you think darn, I wish the council had asked that question. You will be given the opportunity as the public to be able to address this issue and have your concerns addressed at that time as well. So that is it, part of the process. So I think we're, we've got a fairly heavy agenda here. We're going to move on. I have to thank you once again for your cooperation. Thank
And
you.
just, I guess, as a closing comment, if there are councillors or we will be reaching out, as in our team here, just out to the local community. But if there are individuals, then please don't hesitate to call or connect with us at Island Health so we can start the conversations individually and then in a larger setting. Thank you for your time here today, Mayor. And Council.
Thank you so much. Okay, we're moving on now. Correspondence. We have one piece of correspondence on the agenda today from the Arrowsmith Water Service Board Chair, the Arrowsmith Water Service Board meeting. I found that. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that the report from the AWS Management Board Chair dated June 12th, 2023 be received and that council approve the revised Arrowsmith Water Service Joint Venture Agreement July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2027. And point 3, that council approve an amendment to the 2023-2027 Arrowsmith Water Service Financial Plan to add $100,000 for consulting services to obtain the technical information required to inform potential amendments to the provisional operating rule for 2024. I have a mover and a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beal. Any discussion?
Just a question, Mayor.
Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. Since you yourself are on the board, can you tell us what this information is being sought here through the technical information? And also just to clarify if this 100,000 will affect the city's financial plan in any way?
Not at all. It won't affect our financial plan, and I can't comment further. The provincial operating rule needs to be readjusted and refined and examined under different conditions that were maybe set up before maybe climate change took over as much as it has. Climate change has affected so many things in our water system. Supply, obviously, and drought and so forth, and sometimes lack of rain, sometimes too much rain. And so it has the impact is huge on what it has placed on the operational rules. And so what this consultant's report is going to do is to have a look at that with the province anyways, to make sure that we have the proper rules of water usage and for the future moving forward. With the increased development, everything else going on in the city.
Thank you. If I may just to get clarification, this is to do with the 1.6 cubic meters flow of water?
This is to do with the entire operational rule agreement. Yes. Councillor Franz.
To the mayor, deciding on that, is this cost shared at all amongst the other partners?
With the AWS members, yes. So I have a mover and a seconder. Those are the questions. Any further questions or concerns? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, council. Mr. Russell, I'm pretty sure that you're going to be zooming in on this one because some adverse road conditions you may have ran into in getting to work. Mr. Russell, Director of Community Planning and Building, could you please give us a background on the issue regarding consideration of zoning and development amendment bylaw application at 188 McCarter Street?
Certainly, if I may, Mayor and Council, for your consideration is an application to amend a comprehensive development CD10 zone. The requested amendment is to change the intent, the statement of intent, in order to facilitate, to add essentially mental health and/or addiction treatment facility to the statement of intent for this zone in order to facilitate the proposal from Island Health that was detailed earlier at this meeting. If approved, it will ultimately facilitate 19-bed addiction treatment and recovery center within the building as it currently exists at what was known as Elizabeth Manor. The recommendations are per the agenda. As part of these recommendations, staff are recommending that the applicant consider the establishment of a good neighbor agreement, terms of reference for a community advisory committee, as well as preparation of a draft restrictive covenant that addresses some of the uses that they've clearly indicated they're not doing, but just to provide extra comfort, those uses were that will not be used as a safe injection site or safe inhalation site or as an overdose prevention site. And the recommendations are per the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation? And I'm going to have to read them out, so get comfortable. The recommendation, point 1, that the report from the Director of Community Planning and Building dated June 14th, 2023, entitled Consideration of an Application for Zoning and Development Bylaw Amendment at 188 McCarter Street to facilitate a mental health and or addictions treatment facility, file number 3360-PZN047, be received. Point 2, that council, in accordance with the bylaw section of the council agenda, introduce proposed zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000.145 for consideration of first reading. Point 3, that the application be referred to the Parksville Downtown Business Association, the Oceanside RCMP Detachment, and Parksville Volunteer Fire Department for their comment. Point 4, that prior to second reading of zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000.145, the applicant or owners of 188 McCarter Street provide an opportunity for public engagement, such as the developer hosted public open house, and provide comments received to the Community Planning and Building Department for subsequent introduction to council. And point 5, that prior to second reading of zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000.145, the applicant consider the preparation and submission of a section 219 restrictive covenant, good neighbor agreement, and terms of reference for the establishment of a community advisory committee. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Gore, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Mr. Russell, Director of Community Planning and Building, could you please give us a background on the issue regarding the follow-up report, development variance permit and development permit at 249 Finholm Street North to consider issuance of a development variance permit and development permit? Mr. Russell.
Mayor and Council, this afternoon, as of today, required notice has occurred for consideration of the variance. At this time, one piece of correspondence was received, which was distributed to council via the council email. The piece of correspondence was neutral with respect to this application, although it did have some kudos for counter staff in explaining the proposal. At this time, no other correspondence have been received. I would ask the mayor to open the floor to persons whose interest in property may be affected by this variance to have an opportunity to speak. The recommendations are per the agenda. Having considered those public comments, to consider issuance of the development variance permit and development permit to facilitate this townhouse 16 patio home project.
Thank you, Mr. Russell. Is there anyone in the audience that wish to speak regarding this 249 Finholm Street North project? If anyone wishes to speak, could you come to the microphone now, state your name, civic address for the record. Seeing none, I will move on to asking for a mover and a seconder for the recommendation. Point 1, that the report from the Director of Community Planning and Building dated June 8th, 2023, entitled Follow-Up Report, Consideration of a Development Variance Permit and Development Permit to facilitate a patio home residential development on the Blinken Avenue portion of 249 Finholm Street North, files 3090-PVP060 and 3060 PDP 135 be received. Point 2, that upon consideration of public comment received, development variance permit number 23-PVP 060 be issued to the owner of 249 Finholm Street North to facilitate the residential development. Point 3, that development permit number 23-PDP 135 be issued to the owner of 249 Finholm Street North to authorize the general form and character of the residential development. I have a mover and seconder moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Gore. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. We have a report by Mrs. Kaler, our CAO. Could you please give us a background on the issue regarding a follow-up report for the UBCM minister meeting requests, whereby council attains approval of the UBCM minister meeting requests for the upcoming UBCM, which is September 2023. Mrs. Kaler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to council. Council will notice that there are two sections of a table in your agenda. And the first table includes items that council has previously given direction. Sorry, I'm just trying to get to the right part in my agenda here. Has previously given direction to staff to prepare requests for ministers' meetings. And then the second table has items that are still up for discussion today based on submissions from individual councillors. And I believe an additional amendment might be proposed by a member from the floor. And so recommendations are per the report. And just as a reminder, council really does need to make some decisions today and finalize what the requests will be, as we have a timeline of June 30th to submit those requests to the province.
Thank you, Mrs. Kaler. So I will ask at this time, because since it didn't make it onto the agenda that's listed here for the request, I will ask for Councillor Beal to speak to her late addition to minister meeting request proposed amendment. Go ahead, Councillor Beal.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you, councillor, for your attention and patience with this. So we have, where is it? It's item 4C, a request to meet with the Minister of Mental Health and Addictions, and specifically about Central Island treatment options, to discuss the need for treatment options. However, what we don't have included there is any mention of housing needs for those people who may be presently homeless due to mental health and addictions. Or so the background is that Parksville has seen a rise in the number of homeless individuals, and without any sort of year-round shelter facilities, these individuals are faced with precarious living conditions. And additionally, there has been a noted strain on RCMP and emergency services related to the unhoused population. City costs and services are concerns for our residents due to the situation. A year-round shelter would provide a better option for the homeless in our city and would mitigate some of the social disorder we experience at present. And I will note that some of us did recently attend a forum on housing, and one of the presentations indicated a continuum of housing, and prior to, so from people who are unhoused to shelter to supportive housing and so on along the continuum of housing. And it was brought up that that in fact those people who are presently most people or many people who are presently homeless do not necessarily transition well right into supportive housing, that having some sort of shelter facility would be a better transition, allow for better connections with social services. So so my amendment is to include a joint request for a meeting with the Minister of Housing. So it would be that item C, table 1, be amended to include a joint request for a meeting with the Minister of Housing to discuss options for a year-round shelter in Parksville or the area to mitigate the mental health and addictions challenges that are compounded when people are unhoused and have no safe place to reside. So that's that both so my request, the motion is also that the background and request sections of Table 1, Item C be amended to include a commitment by the province to establish a year-round shelter in Parksville for people living in precarious situations. I'd also like to add, though, in the background piece that we have seen in the past, not just this past year, but in previous years, that when we've had a temporary shelter situation, whether it be an extreme weather or cold weather shelter, we continue to have many issues in our community. Those temporary shelters, they're not 24/7, they're not year-round. We still have people out with all their belongings. They have to leave first thing in the morning. And my understanding is from people who work in the area, the business, that a year-round shelter would provide much more stability and furthermore, much better for the surrounding community. So that's my request.
Thank you, Councillor Beal. And so I have some difficulty with this request at this particular time to request a meeting with the minister, whereby as council. No, I'm calling for whether it's on order. I'll chair the meeting. Thank you. The year-round shelter consideration has not actually received approval from this council. This council has not passed a resolution suggesting that we require a year-round shelter. And so whereby is that would probably be the first step to do it, and then ask for a request to speak with the minister. To suggest that we're going to ask for a request to speak to the minister to do this is rather putting the cart before the horse. And I believe it's not in order to do so because there's lots of, I understand it is your opinion that you feel that Parksville feels that a year-round shelter would provide better option, and you are most certainly entitled to your opinion. However, you are one person on council, and it has to be the rest of council that decides that is a good option for Parksville. And we have not had that discussion. And so I think to ask to have that shelter be addressed by the minister at the UBCM is just ahead of the time. And also, to be quite frank, receiving this report to council about 2 hours before a council meeting today was not much attention to detail to where we could have maybe discussed this beforehand as maybe the appropriateness of it. So otherwise I would have probably discussed that in person. So I'm not sure that we can even include this as a request, because why have a request for something that does not have a council resolution to back? Councillor Beal.
Thank you. And I was thinking as you're talking, I wanted to add that I might be putting the cart before the horse. And we had actually understood that BC Housing was going to be coming and speaking with us in June. And as far as I'm concerned, best of my knowledge, this is the last meeting that we're having in June. So obviously that time has passed. And presumably this may be premature. And in fact, I might be fine with withdrawing this. I was prompted to consider this when I saw that we now have consideration to meet with the Minister of Housing. And I don't disagree that there is a need for housing, additional affordable housing, but the same could be said. We haven't actually discussed that and identified that here either. So assuming, and perhaps I could ask a question of staff at this point in time, if in staff, our CAO's opinion, would this be fine to wait for something from BC Housing? And also as part of that, have we in fact heard from BC Housing when they are actually meeting with us? Has a date been set for that?
I think if I can address your one of your points you just made there, Councillor Beal, is I agree that when we already have a meeting that we're going to endorse, hopefully, right now with the Minister of Housing. And maybe that could be part of that discussion, with that Minister of Housing, that we would be, that would probably be the time that that could be considered. If at that time, by that time, so we booked our space with the Minister of Housing. And maybe that could be part of the fruitful discussion anyways regarding housing. It may be if it passes at that time.
If I may, just a
Yes.
follow up there, that was actually my original thought when I saw that, but I was advised that it might be better fit to put here. But when I saw that request for housing, I thought, I think we want to, if we do have the opportunity to meet with the minister, I think we want to speak about where we see concerns on both ends of the spectrum. So that was that prompted me to include that. But if it's possible, if we're able to, first of all, get a meeting with the Minister of Housing, that would be great. And if we're in agreement at when that time comes, that we could also raise that issue, I'm fine with that. And I don't mind withdrawing this at this time.
Right. And further on that, exactly, that would probably be the more preferred method of having this brought to the housing minister's attention, because we have, as you know, before we have these minister meetings, it's been referred to by Councilor Grant as speed dating. You know, it's very quick. We have like 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes maximum. So as council, we get together before that time and discuss, okay, who's going to say what and where, and it's very, very much so, and that would be the time that we would say, and we have to make sure that we, as part of the minister of housing, which is huge portfolio, we want to include this, and this, and that would be the time that would be bring that up. So that would be definitely on the agenda for that meeting, if council approves. Yeah, as you say, yes.
Yeah, so I mean,
Yes.
if there's a possibility of that
Yes.
being at least broached with the Minister of Housing, should we get that
But
appointment,
can we
I'm
carry
fine
on
with
the
that.
meeting as the
Yes.
agenda?
Yes. Anyways, so yes.
So I will withdraw this amendment.
Thank you, Councilor Beal. So be it. So we are back to having a mover and seconder for the recommendation that council endorses table 1 of UBCM minister meeting requests prepared in response to council resolutions 23-150, 23-151, and 23-153, and attached to the June 19th agenda for submission. Part 2, the council endorse table 2 of UBCM minister meeting requests, include proposed additional requests to the Minister of Housing to discuss housing needs in Parksville, and also to the Minister of Agriculture and Food and the Ministry of Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation to discuss the provision of energy for commercial agriculture. And also with the provision that MLA Adam Walker be invited to both proposed meetings. Point 3, that in accordance with UBCM protocol, council assign priority order to the minister meeting request to be submitted. Do I have a mover and a second for that? Moved by Councillor Wood, second by Councillor Martin. Any discussion? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just going to take a quick second to remind myself and council that at any time, council can request a meeting with any minister, and it might take a couple of months. But this speed dating that happens at UBCM isn't necessarily the most effective way to get a minister's attention or his or her staff's attention. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
And good point, Councillor Wood, because that is actually sometimes more effective. And the ministers do agree to meet, and then sometimes we have to travel to Victoria. If that's the case, so be it. But we do get our minister meeting requests. And so council can keep that in mind. If they feel something of a pressing issue, by all means, bring it up to the rest of council, and we can certainly consider that. Thank you for bringing that up. Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do question the addition of the agriculture, food, the Minister of Agriculture and Food and Energy, Mines and Low Carbon Innovation at this time. I totally agree that it is concerning and something that really we do need to look at, that we don't have food sustainability on Vancouver Island. But what I'm worried about is I don't feel like I have enough information here about what are the reasons behind that. I can't help but think that the more I read this about this background, the background and what the request is, why is there not some sort of a task force on the island to look at the sustainability of food sources on the island? What are the barriers? Is this the barrier? Is it lack of land? I just concerned that we don't have the full picture here, and that, like I say, that concerns me. I also wonder about other areas. I mean, the reality is that here in Parksville, we have very little in the way of agricultural land. And I'm curious as to whether or not areas, whether it be Port Alberni, Duncan area, the whole Cowichan Valley, what is their perspective here, and would they not be better placed to bring something like this forward? So since it does affect all of Vancouver Island, and I understand that there's thought to work on this so that it could be brought forward to AVICC in the coming year, but for those reasons, I'm uncomfortable with this request at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Beal, and I share some of that as well. I think to address your question, I'm going to send it to CAO Taylor to address the appropriateness because I know there's past discussions upon this motion that came up already at the AVICC in a different form. So I'll ask CAO Taylor the appropriateness of this because it didn't receive acceptance at the AVICC, and the appropriateness of proceeding to UBCM without having first achieved AVICC's proposal. Is that the proper way? And also to Councillor Beal's request as well as to the appropriateness of the city of Parksville putting this through for a agriculture issue affecting all of Vancouver.
Thank you. Through you to council. So the appropriateness is really up to council to decide if this is an issue that you think your taxpayers have concerns about and that you would advocate for them on the behalf of that. It's really up to council to decide if you have enough interest or agricultural interests, I guess, for that piece. My understanding is that Councillor Wood reached out to the UBCM folks and was advised that this item should be advanced to AVICC in 2024 for consideration of its further advancement to UBCM in 2024. But in the interim, if again, it was a significant issue for this council, another option would be to approach the minister and have an initial discussion with the minister on this item. And so I believe Councillor Wood and Councillor Martin, that was an approach that they wanted to present to council for consideration. I believe they would also, or I should look to Councillor Martin, would also be preparing or asking for assistance to prepare something for AVICC for the next go around, which is in spring. So both options were provided to us by the UBCM policy analyst. And it's really at council's discretion if you feel this is an item that should go, if you want to meet with the minister as an item of priority, that should go into that request.
I see. And I do appreciate Councillor Wood looking at it through the UBCM lens anyways as to the proper procedure. And I think in this particular case, I would like to hear if other council members are approving of that method. And let's talk about it right now. Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I would say that why not? It's just a initial chat with the agriculture minister. It does not hurt. Yes, we don't have a huge agriculture base, but we all need food. I don't see what the point is. I honestly really respect what's being said here by the council members, but to me, it seems like just to get the ear of the minister, we are discussing something that's not really, I'm sorry to say, worth discussing. Is just to have initial chat with the minister. We all have concerns, and I truly support meeting with the minister and sharing our concerns.
Any other comments? Was that your hand up? Councillor Krenz? Yes, it was, or just an itchy ear? Okay.
A little both, maybe.
Councillor Krenz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I would have the concern similar to the concerns raised by the mayor that there's not necessarily been a council resolution around this particular issue that would see it as being a priority that we need to bring to the ear of the minister. I also fully take into consideration what councillors Wood and Gore have pointed out around this being just opening up the discussion with the minister, and in keeping with our goal of advocacy and engagement, any opportunity to engage with more ministers, I'm all for. The only reason maybe not to do it based on that line of reasoning is if we are watering down our efficacy of our requests by having more requests rather than fewer. Yeah, I would also build on what was said in that I have had the opportunity to go down to Victoria and speak with elected officials down there and raise issues and discuss these. And so those channels are definitely open to us as well. This is just a bit more of a formal setting with their staff present. And it's our first year doing this. So I feel like the stakes aren't super high at this point. So I'm happy to support if there are motions that council wants to bring forward.
Councillor Martin?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I've been through this already. The idea of having food shortage on Vancouver Island is pretty obvious. We don't have it. And Parksville just happens to be, we're on council here. We can talk about this with the minister and get his ear and help us navigate what we need to do in order to do this, and have something prepared for AVICC next April would be a wise thing, I think. And this is what Councillor Wood, when he talked to the UBCM folks, found out. So that was why we kept it on here. Now, I didn't have a chance to talk about the housing, and the housing was put on there because I was at the housing event last Tuesday, and it is about housing, not just homelessness. And so that's why I'd like to keep that on there too. And I really feel it's that important for our community to understand what our concerns are here in Parksville and how we could get their ear too. And that's a formality. That's the way I see it. Thank you. But if any more questions of me, I'd be very pleased to answer them. Thank you.
I have no problem with putting this as a question for our UBCM Minister of Agriculture and Food. But I would just like to guarantee that before we meet them, that we very much refine this request as to what the ask really is, because I know it was brought up at AVICC. And I know many of us were confused with what the actual ask was. And maybe that's why it didn't go through. So I think that we have to refine that request and with that provision. And I know you will. You have help from other members of council that are good at writing proposals. So yeah, I'll support this as such. That's good. Okay. Anybody any more to say? Okay, all those in favor? I pass unanimous. Thank you. So.
We also need to
Do-
prioritize these, or is that a separate motion?
I see. Oh, yes, we did. Yes. Yeah, we wouldn't have had to if we only had one, right?
Yes. So
Yeah. I would recommend that we prioritize the housing first and the agriculture one second. Is that?
Well,
Well, it's
the answer is
agriculture. and
health.
food in it.
But sorry to interrupt
yeah.
there, but my understanding is that we've already agreed to the items that are on table 1. There are 3 items there, I believe, and that, or perhaps yes, 3 items. And then the 2 additional items are on table 2. So since we've agreed to table 2, we now have 5 items. And so for the requests, we need to now prioritize these from 1 to 5. That's my understanding. So we have
Right.
both health,
Yes.
the medical, and also environment, mental health and addiction, agriculture and food, as well as housing.
I don't have that in front of me right now. Yeah, I don't have that in front of me. So that's, yes, I agree. I don't.
if I may, it's in the agenda.
Oh, this one, the little one?
No, your digital one probably.
Yeah, thank you. That's what I don't have. So council, then do you want to go through these as they come through as to, or this is going to be kind of interesting. Councillor Grens.
Perhaps I can.
A format would
Yeah.
be great.
Perhaps I can propose a suggested priority order that I might suggest. So
Yes.
I would propose first item on the list to be item E, housing, followed by item A, health, followed by item B, environment, then C, which is mental health and addictions, and then D, agriculture and food.
Yeah, I just want to make sure staff got all of that. Yes, no. If that was good. Comments, Councillor Bill. Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Did you have a question or did? Oh, I see. Oh, second for discussion, yes. Okay, that has been moved by Councillor Grens, seconded by Councillor Wood, and discussion regarding that format. Councillor Grens, speak to your format, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason that I suggested this order is because it mostly is most consistent with my interpretation of our strategic priorities that we've determined as a council.
Councillor Wood, anything more? I would just comment on that. I agree. It actually suits already our strategic plan. I agree with your comment. Councillor Beal, you had a comment too regarding the motion on the floor.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Maybe a close to Councillor Gren's thought process. I actually was thinking that item A, to meet with the Minister of Health regarding the shortage of medical practitioners. I saw that as a number one, but again, fitting with our strategic plan in terms of advocacy. And it was certainly something that I heard loud and clear from the community when I was door knocking. So you've got that as a second, is that correct? Or so do we have a coin toss in the future here?
Yeah, I think it's really not, not the end of the world one way or the other, you know, quite frankly. I think that we already have our requests in, and I think we can go on this forever because there's 5 different ones, all right, you know, like how many multiples of that there are. So I think unless there's really any huge strong objection, and nobody has coins anymore, Mary, so you know it just doesn't work. Right? Coins to toss. I like to just call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Done. Thank you. Councillor or CEO Kaylor, is that all we need on that particular issue before we disappear? Okay, thank you. Thanks for the format, Councillor Grens. Thinking on your feet. Good for you. Mr. Kaylor, you get to come back. I was wondering where you're going. Ms. Kaylor, CAO, could you please give us a background on the issue regarding the 2022 annual municipal report, whereby the community charter requires municipalities to prepare an annual report regarding financial and operational progress in relation to objectives and measures established for that year. The 2022 annual report has been prepared and made available for public inspection pursuant to Section 98 of the community charter. CEO Kaylor.
Thank you. That all sounds very legislative and bureaucratic, but I would definitely encourage all of our residents, and I know all of our council members have already read this great document. It does come out every year around this time, and our staff put a lot of effort into making it visually appealing and easy to read. And it's quite impressive, I would say, to see how many different things the city staff provide for our taxpayers. And every year it's quite a joy to read a summary of the successes, and council guides that success. So these documents are required by legislation, but I think over time we've made a really good advancement in making it accessible and kind of worth more than just ticking the legislative box. And I think it's quite rewarding for counselors also to read, the accomplishments and see the decisions that they make at this table come to fruition actually in the community. And there's photographs of things that, many years ago, somebody made a motion. It came up at a discussion in council, then it shows up in the budget, and eventually we end up with a new amenity or a new service. And so it's quite a pleasure to read this for me every year, and I hope council feels the same. And we are always looking for input from the community too on what they might want to see over and above the legislative requirements, which is the financial statements and objectives from council. So I hope that people will take the opportunity to take a look at it online and celebrate some of the successes and then provide feedback to council on where they would like to see things go in the future.
Thank you, CEO Kaler. And where would the public find that online? Where's it going to be?
Thank you. It's on Let's Talk Parksville and on our website, and I believe it's linked in the agenda today. So
Right. And for those listening outside, it's on the Let's Talk Parksville website, which is quite easy to navigate if you want to get right to it. And it's really is worth reading. It's not all dry, but you can pick out some really interesting tidbits out of it that you've been following, and you wonder why is going to answer a lot of your questions. But if you want to ask those questions of council, we love receiving your emails as well. Or if you have any suggestions for maybe next year we should consider, we're all ears. We're your representatives. So please take the time to have a look at that report. Do I have a mover? Sorry, is there any other questions for CEO Kelly? Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that council endorse the annual report for the year ended December 31, 2022 as presented? A mover, please. That would be moved by Councillor Grenz and seconded by Councillor Beal. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, CEO Kaler. Under bylaws, we have for first reading zoning and development amendment bylaw 2023 number 2000-145. A text amendment to CD 10 at 188 McCarter Street. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that zoning and development amendment bylaw number 2023 and 200.139 be read a first time? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Martin. Any errors or omissions? Oh, yes, Councillor Franz.
Not an error or omission, just question.
Oh, I'm okay. I'll take that now.
Through the mayor to staff too, I recognize this is just a first reading on it. Earlier though, we passed some resolutions regarding referrals and requests for open house and so on. Is it required that first reading happens for those referrals and open houses to happen, or is it possible to defer first reading until after those, public input and engagement and referrals come back?
I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Fraz. Both are valid options for council consideration.
Okay, then with that being said, I'd like to defer this until after we get our referrals, the points 3, 4, and 5 from our previous resolutions back.
We need a seconder for deferral. Yeah. Yes. Do I have a second for deferral? That is seconded by Councillor Gore. Thank you. So there's no further debate, then that has been deferred. And so just for the benefit of the public, so a new vote? I'll vote on the deferral, yes.
Sorry, but there's not.
There's no debate on, there is no debate on deferral.
yes, if I may, so we do need to call the question on the deferral, but no debate.
Okay. Thank you. Call the question on the deferral. All those in favor? Deferral passes. And for staff's benefit, sorry, I'm going to call out so that is those 4. Yeah, I'm going to, yeah, that's what I'm doing now. Those in favor? Okay. And those opposed? Those are opposed are Councillor Beal and Councillor Wood. Thank you. That passes. No, you can't. But thanks for asking. Yeah, Councillor Hurst.
I was just
Yeah,
thinking
okay.
for the public's to understand what happened.
Okay. Yeah, and I understand. I can, yes. So what council just voted for is on the McCarter application was that instead of hearing or giving first reading at this particular time, it's actually to go through with the public hearing and open house agenda that we already talked about before actually giving them first reading. And as Director of Planning Blaine is referred to, it's good one way or the other. So in this particular case, we're going to get input from the community on this before giving first reading, which is happens in the past. Councillor Kayla, maybe
Yeah.
explain a little more.
Thank you.
Kayla, CAO Kayla.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
She's a
That,
counselor now. I
that
don't know if
is-
that's a demotion or promotion.
that is almost correct. I just want to make it clear that this, it's not including the public hearing. So the public hearing
Okay.
does occur
Yeah.
after second reading. But this would, if folks at home wanted to follow through, the report under 4A has recommendations for referrals to specific agencies and the open house by the Island Health proponents. And we would defer first reading from council until after that has occurred. And so that is, as the Director of Planning said, there's the option of doing first reading, doing all of that stuff, and then doing second, or we do the public consultation informally first. But we'd like to introduce it to council so that you are aware of what the public open house is about, and it sort of comes to you first for that endorsement. And then what would most likely happen is you consider first and second reading together at one meeting after that input has been gathered from the referral folks and from the community.
Thank you.
And then the public hearing would happen formally at council before third reading.
Right, after second reading. Yes. Right. All those understand how that process is going to take place? That's great. So thank you. Anyways, that's interesting, and all that information will be available for council and the public before first reading. Correct? There will be a compilation, I hope. Thank you. Now we have 0.5 bylaw, third reading for zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 2000.139. Map amendment to small lot residential SLR1 at 625 and 633 Pioneer Crescent. Do I have a mover and a recommendation? Mover and a seconder for the recommendation that zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022, number 200.139 be read a third time. Moved by? I have a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Grant, seconded by Councillor Martin. Yes, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Oh, sorry. Any error or discussion? Yes. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, sorry. It's been moved and seconded. Yeah, go ahead. Councillor Grant. Councillor Grant, go ahead. Mover in a second. Okay. Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. So just for council, I think a couple of my members and other council members are also aware that a similar proposal came before the council in 2013. So it's like deja vu, actually in June of 2013. So close to 10 years ago. At that time, very clear message from the council was against this proposal, even though that was 12 lots. This one is about 10 lots. And I just want to mention a couple of things that the council commented why they were against this. Increased traffic, in their opinion. They thought that the size of the lots was too small for the neighborhood. They were cramming the homes together. And they were also worried about the number of trees that would come down and will set a precedent for the neighborhood. So I do agree with the council 10 years ago, what was said. I definitely agree with the arguments for it, that this area could use some revitalization, some houses that are old and torn down could use a facelift. Like, I do see the benefits. However, this project, as it stands, can have up to 6 lots. My understanding is, and I know our Director of Planning is online and he can correct me, with the possibility of an additional secondary suite, rental suite, possibly. So to me, that possibility of having a total of 12 homes, people, you know, I know the argument is to have young people be afforded the opportunity to perhaps buy a home. I know young people, friends of mine who are not interested in owning any homes. They love just renting. So in my opinion, that gives both the opportunities of buying for some people and also renting for others who are not interested. And that rental income definitely helps paying the mortgages. So I want to hear what the rest of the council has to say for it or against it. But as it stands now, I am against the proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments, Councillor Grens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just maybe a question through to staff. If I'm not mistaken, the previous proposal on this property 10 years ago contemplated the opening up of the lane behind the property in question.
If I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Grens, that is correct.
Thank you. So to me, that is a big difference between these two proposals, is the lane behind this Pioneer is currently full of trees. And while it is designated as a lane, if you look on the city map, currently this proposal doesn't contemplate putting that lane into a paved condition. So were that the proposal that had come to us today, I would have a harder time supporting it. But as it stands right now, this is immediately adjacent to a busy street, like it's 1 block over from a busy street. It's close to a lot of the amenities that we want people to be close to, so they're less reliant on automobiles. And we have a need for housing across Canada. So this proposal, to my mind, given the difference between this one and last time, is positive.
Councillor Beal?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I will be supporting this proposal. I would like to echo what Councillor Grens has said, in that the previous one, that was many years ago, a lot of the concerns were due to the fact that the lane was going to be used and the traffic there, and the garbage truck would not be able to get in there and turn around and on and on and on, and also the number of houses. I believe that this proposal could integrate very well into the surrounding neighborhood, unlike some other medium density proposals, not for this site, but if it was to go medium density, that could even be small walk-up apartments and all that sort of thing. So to have a number of separate lots in there with houses on them should integrate very well into the surrounding neighborhood. The central common access to the development gives the feeling, I think, can give the feeling of a cul-de-sac, and the end properties face the street. And I'm really hopeful that if it does go ahead, that the houses, the design of the houses closest to the street would have windows facing Pioneer, not just the garage, so that all of that would build a greater connection with the street and the neighborhood. I think having the additional houses in this area will increase eyes on the street, which leads to a safer environment, and again contributes to a feeling of community in the neighborhood. I think that it's a nice example of infill to increase housing options. I do hope that every effort would be made to preserve trees, especially those along property lines. I'm thinking of the property to the west, which I understand that the neighbor there is quite concerned that trees on that property could be negatively impacted during excavation and construction. Hopefully, since that's the backyard area of these proposed houses, that would not be the case. And I also would really hope to see that the trees that are along that back lane, which Councillor Grenz has referred to, and also I believe there's to be an adjustment with the lane width to align it better. And again, that should preserve a number of those trees. I'm also very pleased to see that the plans include in-ground rainwater infiltration. So again, I think that's a real plus for the proposal. So I will be supporting this.
Thank you, Councillor Beal. Beal, any other discussion? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate all the comments from council so far. Definitely want to keep as much green space as possible, tree canopy. But at the same time, we juggle a bunch of things at this table. Housing density is better land use than the single family detached that we all grew up with. Single family detached is bordering on non-sustainable anymore. And I live in single family detached. And I hope my kids can possibly somehow afford single family detached when they're ready to buy. But from what I see of housing scarcity across the island, across in the city, across the island, across the province and the country, we see just the fact of the prices going so high that it is very easy for people to say where they love to live, they say, let's not build anymore. I like it how it is. And that is part of the problem of the prices that we see in housing across the entire country. And to, to say that, the evil developers are the ones who are making the money. Well, let's all take a look at how much money we put into our homes, say 20, 10, 5 years ago, and how much tax-free capital gains we're going to have from those evil developers that built our homes and from the evil councils that voted yes for that rezoning back then. So the way I look at it is I try to take as much into account as possible. I think housing density is an environmentally way to allow people more affordable homes. Are these homes that are going to be built, are they cheap? They're not cheap, but they are more affordable than a single family detached on a half acre or a town lot. So the market will give us better prices on our housing density. Non-market housing is part of the equation. I'm not a big fan of short-term rentals. I'm not a fan of empty homes sitting there as investment. There's a lot of different ways we have to look at this. And part of it is if the housing density is a good fit for the community, then I think it's incumbent on us to approve that in hopes that more market housing will slowly start to decrease housing scarcity and hopefully decrease the price in general, because supply and demand is a law and it is a thing. And so I try to juggle a bunch of different things at this table, but this development in particular, I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Yes.
I know you're reaching for the microphone.
Thank you.
If you put up your hand, it would be a better indicator for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor.
Yes. And I'll just address, there's no questions from the audience at this time. So sorry, that time is gone. Thank you.
I would like to.
Councillor Martin.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I really appreciate the way Councillor Wood expressed what's going on in our society and what's going on in Parksville too, and how the densification is environmentally supportive. So I will support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. No further questions. I'll just summarize at this time. I will be supporting this application as well. I'm very pleased anyways that they're taking advantage of previous council's forward thinking for the small lot subdivisions, which makes certainly a better efficiency for infill developments, helping somewhat maybe in the affordability with a small lot subdivision. Of course, the pricing of the total package drops considerably. So I will support this, and I'm glad to see the application brought forward. I would like to, unless there's any further questions, Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. I hear what the council members had to say about the affordability, quantity and the quality. You know, there's always a trade-off, as a friend of mine would always say. So are we in this search for the quantity of housing that we will compromise the quality of life? We have to ask that question as well. I'm not saying necessarily this project will, but it's at the same time, we need to be cognizant of that. Can Parkfield solve the housing crisis of Oceanside, BC, or Vancouver Island? I don't think we can solve the housing crisis. Can housing ever become affordable and hopefully the prices will come down? I disagree. I've never seen the housing prices come down in my short span of life. Every neighborhood is distinct, and when somebody buys a home, they just don't buy the plot of land that they can build a house on, or the house that they're looking at. Everybody looks at a neighborhood that attracts them to the area. And what I've noticed with this neighborhood is the involvement of the public. I understand a lot of time it has been to oppose projects, which is just one part of public engagement. But I also want to mention that a lot of these neighbors know each other. There's a very strong community feeling in this neighborhood. I respect that, and we saw that with the proposal to build what they're working on, the park in Pioneer. So I respect the whole community feeling and people coming together, and the public hearing when we heard significant opposition to this proposal in 2013 and recently, like last month. Another comment I want to make is perhaps to ask a question to our Director of Planning. Is there a vision for that lane at the back of this property in the future? I see with this proposal that the trees will be preserved, but in the future, setting a precedent and see other properties getting developed, does the city or the planning department envision that to be a lane used in the future for traffic to be cleared and for access? Thank you.
If I may, Mayor, through the councillor.
Mr. Russell, go ahead.
That's really a question of the transportation master plan. And my understanding is it's not specifically identified in the transportation master plan. So its long-term future plans are kind of silent. Obviously, it's recognized that it is a legal road right of way. And at some point in an undetermined point in the future, could it be developed? Potentially. But there's nothing in a capital works plan where the city's budgeted to complete that lane, and there's nothing in the transportation master plan, planning out for a future construction of that lane.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councilor? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and again to you, Mr. Russell. And I'm sorry, I think should have asked you in the previous when this item came before the council. Can you speak to about the land lift with the rezoning that we will see and the contribution that's being proposed? So what I hear is the land value, just by the council approving this here today, will almost triple to 2.2 million. And what the city is getting is close to $8,000 for the amenities. Is that correct?
If I may, through the mayor, through Councillor Gore, there's a couple things. So, at the time of subdivision, each lot, the city and the regional district will receive $28,000 per property that goes to broader infrastructure costs. There is an amenity that they're proposing with respect to the an upgrade to the park. So they're proposing to provide $8,000 towards improvements for a play area at the Pioneer Crescent Park. as far as, there's also offsite infrastructure that they will be contributing to. That's about $230,000 in offsite infrastructure is estimated for the project, as well as tax contributions, which are outlined in the staff reports of what their anticipated tax contribution would be. So they believe that was about an 800% increase in tax revenue to the city as a result.
Chris Hansen, one more.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Russell. The other question is, since this subdivision would require more than 3 lots, would this not qualify for the 5% park dedication or cash in lieu?
If I may, through the mayor, through to Council Gord, that is correct. That would be something as part of the subdivision that council would contemplate in the future.
Thank you. Any further questions? I'll call the question. All those in favor? Councillor Martin, Councillor Grenz, Councillor Wood, Councillor Bale, and Mayor O'Brien in favor. All those opposed? Councillor Fraz, Councillor Gore opposes. Motion carries. Thank you, Council. Bylaws, third reading, zoning and development of amendment bylaw 2022 number 2000.140, map amendment to small lot residential SLR 1 at 211 Martindale Road. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendation that zoning and development amendment bylaw 2022 number 2000.140 be read a third time? Could I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Wood, seconded by Councillor Beal. Are there any errors or omissions or discussion? Yes, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, with regards to the property at 211 Martindale, one question I'll come up to it. Whereas I was in full support for the rezoning of the 2 lots on Pioneer Crescent, I actually have serious reservations about this rezoning request. I'm concerned that the orientation of the proposed lots does not foster any connection to the street and the neighborhood. What you end up with effect is like a little lane, an access driveway that for the 5 houses that would all be facing the neighbor's fence and not necessarily I'm concerned that it will neither feel like a strong connection to the street. And quite frankly, I don't think that that's a very aesthetically pleasing look at all. I understand that the lot is large, but I would like to hear some confirmation from our Director of Planning. Is the width of this lot such that it could be divided into 2 lots? If I could ask that question.
Mr. Russell, are you still on the line?
I am, Mayor, through to Councillor Beal. So I believe that it would potentially be dividable into 4 lots, but that would involve construction of the lane.
Thank you, Mr. Russell.
Thank you. So I had understood that it would be relatively straightforward to, in fact, create 2 lots here. And with that, one could imagine 2 houses along with 2 carriage houses, for instance, providing both a total of 4 residences rather than the 5 that's proposed here, including a potential for some rental, which could be a benefit for mortgage holders, but also for those who want and need to rent in the area. And again, it would provide a stronger connection to the street and orientation to the street. I feel that that's a better neighborhood fit for the area, and also better SEPTED, which is crime prevention through environmental design. So unless I'm convinced otherwise by other councillors' insights, I can't support this I just feel that the disadvantages outweigh the advantages of this proposal. And yet I'm generally supportive of infill, but I just don't think it's the right look for this location. And that's where I'm leaning.
Sorry. Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. We, at this table, building on different table for that one, building on Councillor Wood's comments, we can't solve a lot of things at this table. We can't solve the homelessness problems. We can't solve opioid problems. We can't solve the housing problem. You name it. We can't solve climate change, but we can make all of these items worse, and we can contribute to making all these items worse. There are people sitting across the country at tables like this who collectively are making these problems worse by not, and in particular, I'm talking about housing. Canada is now building at a rate much lower than it has over previous generations. I actually just last week, I took the population of Canada, put it on one row, and then I took the completed housing units on a next row to calculate the per capita new housing unit construction historically going back to 1948. And if you look at the chart, the per capita housing units peaks in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and then goes on a steep decline, goes a little bit of a boost during the early 2000s, and then goes down again. That activity follows, unsurprisingly, a very large generation that we have in North America. And it's also very unsurprising that we have this problem across North America of expensive housing. I was able to participate in the housing forum last week as well. I very much enjoyed that opportunity. In preparation for that, I actually went and looked around other jurisdictions to see what is being done around housing task forces. And I found in Indiana, the Hoosiers are having the same problems we're talking about here. Housing affordability is a real problem across North America. It's not, so as I said, it's not something we can solve, but we can make it worse by making it more difficult for young families to get into housing. That said, on this particular item, I share Councillor Beal's concerns around this proposal. There are a number of factors that she hasn't raised that come to mind for me as well. Never mind whether this proposal fits into the character of the existing community, but also the proximity to the river is a bit of a problem for me. And we are trying to do our best to maintain a corridor through that river area that is good for animal habitat, and this council is working on other initiatives around that. And so for that reason, I am also reluctant to support this proposal.
Any other comments from council? I usually try and save my to the end. So if that's it, I am supporting this proposal. I feel that it's the right fit. As far as being part of the animal corridor is actually on the other side of Turner Road, or sorry, Martindale Road on this one. So, and there's already housing on the other side. And so that are even closer to the river. So I'm not sure how that actually fits into the equation, but your reading of that, it's your opinion, absolutely. I too, though, recognize the fact that we need more housing, and recognizing that we have it identified now by Prime Minister as well as the province. The province is saying councils in every municipality has to look at this seriously. We have to provide more housing for Canadians. And by doing it with infill, the fact that it is not aesthetically pleasing, I don't think is enough to turn down an application simply for that. Your opinion that is not aesthetically pleasing is maybe not the same opinion as the person that's living in the house feels that their new home that they were able to afford, and now they can live in the community they wanted to, which is Parksville, which has been very welcoming to many other residents at this time. So I feel that it's subjective. Anyways, what's aesthetically pleasing as well. Form and character is one thing, But this is sort of like for council to perhaps redesign a piece of property as to what would be more to their aesthetic taste, I think is not really our position. Our position in this particular case is to provide housing on another small lot area, which will provide more housing, more affordability, but at the same time recognizing that we have many people that do not live in our area. I know just recently we talked about the support workers that we had, Councillor Gore mentioned about in the healthcare work. I know our dentists in the area, they say they can't get hygienists, not that there's not hygienists available. It's the fact that the hygienists cannot afford to live here. So we have, on one hand, we have the people saying, what are you doing with all this development? We don't have healthcare workers. We don't have doctors. We don't have the dentists when the support. Well, the reason we don't have it because part of it is they can't afford to live here. And so Councillor Gren's made a point about we can make things a lot worse. I look at it as my glass is full. We can make things somewhat better. We are not going to solve the problem, but a little bit at a time. We're not going to solve climate change, but we're going to do our bit to try and do what we can. And our council has been, what's on that, on a different subject, of course. But by providing more housing for more people is going to make our community stronger. It's going to make it more diverse. Parksville is a great place to live, and we shouldn't take the attitude of roll up the bridge because other people want to move here. They were accepting to us when we moved here. And unfortunately, when we moved here, the developers, those evil developers, had to cut down trees so that they could build our houses. And that's unfortunate, but I know as a resident where that happened is I planted far more trees that were actually on my lot anyways. So, and that's what this neighborhood does because Parksville is very cognizant of approving approval of nature. So I'm very much against shutting down a possible subdivision for the lack of trees, because if it wasn't for those lack of trees, we wouldn't be living here ourselves. Every one of us, this whole area was treed 300 years ago. So just to let you know. But in this particular case, we're helping somewhat with the amount of housing availability for other people to locate here. And I think that's a strong thing. And we can still have a small town community by having people. If we control the land development that's going on in Parksville, and we're doing it very well with our diverse range of housing options being put forward. And that is the key thing. Is this council and the previous council is looking at a housing strategy that provides diverse housing options. And it's meeting those, and this is part of it. And so it's all just part of the chain. But I think to stand back and say, no, we don't like it because it doesn't look quite as good as what the old neighborhood is. Well, that's not our call. And the other thing is that looming in the background is the provincial government has made no uncertain terms very prevalent that there's certain communities in the British Columbia now, what they call, they're on the naughty list. And they have been identified as areas that don't have enough housing, and perhaps they've been shutting down housing proposals. The provincial government has put those communities on notice that they will step in and override council's ability to make decisions on housing decisions like this. They will take over without any public consultation. And that is a threat that I don't want to have over our heads. I think that if we be responsible as a municipality to approve housing initiatives like this, obviously we turn down things that are against the environment, the ruin our municipality. We control it, we change it, we mold it, and we create the better project. But in this particular case, I think that this project is very acceptable to many that would welcome the opportunity to live here. That's why I support it. Councillor Gore.
Thank you, Mayor. Perhaps my comment will not be directly to this proposal, but one thing that you mentioned about the province using its paramountcy powers and forcing municipalities. Well, if the province does that, it's their prerogative. I will not be threatened by the province. I was elected by the people of Parksville. I will make the decisions based on what I think is best for Parksville. If the province is still going to go ahead and abuse or use their powers, well, they will come and ask the same people to vote next year. So I'm not threatened by what the province has to say or do.
Thanks. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a clarification, if we had the proposal as it is, does that mean the laneway has to be opened? Or would be opened
Will
with
address,
those trees on it?
Mr. Russell, did you hear the comment or the question?
I did, Mayor, if I may, through to Councillor Martin. It ultimately depends on what proposal they go ahead with under their current zoning. So, for example, if someone was just to subdivide it into 2 lots, as Councillor Beal suggested, then access would likely just be off of Martindale. If they were to maximize what might be achievable under their zoning, they might look to develop, 4 lots, and depending on what they're proposing, they could potentially utilize the lane. Alternatively, they could also look at providing a private road with a layout very similar to what's being contemplated. So we don't know yet until someone applies for that subdivision application. The proposal that's being shown to council to date is based on them not developing the lane and using an internal private road to facilitate the proposal.
Thank you.
So you good, Councillor Martin? Yeah. So Mr. Russell, while you're still there, so if this proposal was say to be turned down, the developer could actually come back and actually include development of that lane. Is that correct? With a new proposal?
If I may, Mayor, yes, they could potentially.
So that lane could be developed. Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Councillor Grants?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit more clarification on that. So the development of the lane is potentially more likely, I guess, under that second scenario than it is under the current proposal. Is that clear? And that would come at the development permit stage as well? Like at what stage does that happen?
If I may, Mayor, through to Councillor Grant. So again, it's probability. So I will not being cheeky, but your guess is a little bit as good as mine to a certain extent. That being said, the developer would have to look at the cost. So they would have to look at the cost of their own private road and the number of lots they're going to achieve versus the cost of developing the lane. So, they could probably get a better lot layout if the lane was developed with 4 lots versus an internal road with 4 lots, because it would be more conducive. That being said, there's probably higher costs for them to develop the lane than to go with an internal road. So, I would say it's still more probable that they would go with an internal road, but again, your guess is as good as mine. With respect to a development permit, so if the property is zoned small lot residential, it would be considered intensive residential and subject to a development permit. Under the existing single family residential zoning, it is not subject to a development permit.
Answer your questions? Yes. I think it's be careful what you wish for. Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. First of all, or rather explain a couple of things. When I first saw this proposal, I actually thought I would be supporting it. I'm, very much in favor of infill, but in my opinion, it does need to be smart. And I suppose that is my opinion. But I have seen time and time again, reference to when you have houses, et cetera, that are residences that are oriented to the street, it's considered a plus. And this is not simply my opinion, but we saw this in the wording for the proposal for Finholm Street or Blanken as well, that the developer took pains to orient, to set up to set it up so that the houses, a number of the residences are in fact facing Blanken Street to support that sense of neighborhood, of connection to the street, both for safety, but for developing community in the area. So this is not something that I have simply dreamed up. It is something that I have come across in conferences that I have attended about placemaking, about building community. It is something that I have read in proposals by developers in this community and read elsewhere. And so I just wanted to clarify that people will see that when you're looking at proposals, and also in our SEPTED, understanding of SEPTED as well, that again, having eyes on the street improves safety and security in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Any further comments or questions from council? I'll call the questions. All those in favor? I've been here before. That would be Mayor O'Brien in favor, and the rest of council opposed. Or all those opposed? Yeah, let's do it right. Okay, there you go. Thank you, council.
You're a good sport.
I would just like to be a loner sometimes. Sometimes, I know. Sometimes it's great. There are two motions on the agenda today for consideration. Appointment of council liaison to Parksville and District Historical Society. Motion has been placed on the agenda in lieu of notice, so council may vote on it at the June 19th regular meeting. Do I have a seconder for, oh, I see, yes. Do I have a seconder for the recommendation? Councilor Fraz, thank you. Councilor Fraz seconds it. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Councilor Grants, I'm sorry, did you have your hand up? Yeah, no, I was looking at that side of the room. No, you got it. Gotcha. You must learn from Councilor Wood. Thank you. Thank you. That is unanimous. Thank you. Second motion on the agenda this afternoon is appointments to the Arrowsmith Water Service and Englishman River Water Service Management Boards. This motion has been placed on the agenda in lieu of notice, so council may vote on it at the June 19th regular meeting. Do I have a seconder for the motion that the following amendments be made to the council appointments for the period of November 8th, 2022 to November 6th, 2023? A, that Councillor Joel Grenz be appointed to the Arrowsmith Water Service Management Board as a voting member. B, that Councillor Sean Wood be appointed to the Arrowsmith Water Service Management Board as an alternate member. C, that Councillor Sean Wood be appointed to the Englishman River Water Service Management Board as an alternate member. Seconder, please. Councillor Grenz. Any discussion? Councillor Gordon.
So thank you, Mayor. So I understand with the previous motion and the change in the liaison position, there was an email sent out to the council asking for their availability or interest. I don't know if it was just me, but I did not receive any intimation or expression of interest asking for if I was available or any other council members would be. So can you speak to that if the interest from other council members was sought on this transition?
Thank you. On and off here. Okay.
Sorry, so the question was, why was someone asked if they wanted to do this? Sorry, if I may, through the mayor. So my understanding is Councillor Grenz is already the appointed member. And what happened at our most recent, it wasn't actually a City of Parksville issue, but one of the other members was unable to attend. And so we discussed the efficiency of having alternate members so that we didn't have to cancel the meeting as a result of not having quorum. So the alternate members are just to provide an extra backup in case both appointed members are unable to be there. We hadn't run into that situation before, but we did. Thankfully, the other local government was able to rally somebody very quickly, and we were able to reorder the AWS and ERWS meetings so that we could proceed with one while the person frantically drove here, I'm sure within the speed limit, to attend that meeting. So this is really I would suggest a bit of a redundancy in that we're appointing an additional alternate member from Parksville so that we would always be represented at those two meetings.
Thank you. You understand? Yeah, that's great. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation? No, yeah. Do I have a second for the recommendation? We've got that. Any further discussion? Councillor Martin, has Councillor Martin left the room? Thank you, Councillor Martin. I was just asking if there's any further discussion. Councillor Martin, when you're out of the room, are you okay? Are you good? Sorry? Yeah, to do a 6. Yeah, you're good? Okay, thank you. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you. Are there any other notices of motion for the next meeting? Liaison reports. Part of the council meeting we all look forward. We now move to liaison reports in the interest of efficiency. I'd ask the council members keep their updates concise. Councillor Wood, would you like to provide an RDN update? That's fine. You did the last time. We I think kind of agreed unofficially that it would be alternate meetings anyway. So yes, I appreciate that. Councillor Beal, do you have a liaison reports? And I'll let you identify them as you see fit.
Thank you. And just to be cheesy, these are not all for the liaison report. It's okay. I've got it down to one page. It's all right.
Oh,
Okay, thank you.
You saw us sweating there a little bit?
That's
Looking at our
exactly,
watches. Yes,
exactly.
we were.
No, I will start with the Parksville and District Chamber of Commerce. And I did attend the Business Awards hosted by the Parksville Chamber of Commerce, along with Mayor Doug O'Brien, and also Councillor Gore was in attendance. And in addition to the many business and not-for-profit categories, an award for Citizen of the Year was presented to an individual whose volunteerism and outstanding service and dedication has made a significant contribution to the community. And I'm happy to share that this year's winner is Cheryl Dill. And she has played a leadership role in the Beach Fest Society and in bringing about the outdoor theater, among other things. So I'd also like to wish all the nominees and winners a heartfelt congratulations for their contributions to our community. Moving on to the Early Learning and Childcare Council of Oceanside. I attended a meeting and there is a motion going to the UBCM, which was shared at this table. There is also a request for additional support at the community level. So I'll leave it at that. Recruitment and retention of qualified staff is an ongoing focus. And to that end, a grant was received to create a task force looking at this, and there's a strategic planning meeting forthcoming. Wages for early childcare educators is an ongoing topic. And the UBCM is facilitating a childcare facility design meeting. And if it's in the afternoon, I will try and attend. I have the date, but not the time. There continues to be a sizable wait list for childcare in our area, but we weren't able to get complete numbers during our meeting, so I can't share that at this time. The childcare facility, though, in Qualicum Beach, Into the Woods it's called, is open now, and they're opening and they're doing a phase-in approach. There's, of course, the one at Arrowview that's open. There's the BGC next door, and Arrington has some after-school set up as well. The Vancouver Island Regional Library, the summer reading program starts July 4th. And June 20th, registration opens tomorrow, June 20th. So that just opens. If you don't sign up tomorrow, I'm sure you'll still have an opportunity after that. There's a program for children, for teens and adults. And the theme this year is travel through time. with opportunities to track your weekly progress to enter to win prizes. You can join virtually or in person at our local branch. And there's not just reading, there are songs, line drawings, and various celebrations that people can take part in, and both virtually and in person. I'm also happy to report that negotiations have successfully wrapped up with the library's QP staff members, so that's really good news. There does continue to be some concern regarding access challenges after hours and on weekends, and hopefully there will be a positive practical solution found soon. National Indigenous Peoples Day is June 21st to celebrate Indigenous peoples' culture and heritage. And June is National Indigenous History Month. People are encouraged to participate in activities to learn more about the richness and diversity of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis cultural expressions and stories. You may be aware that the PCTC lights have been changed to orange to reflect National Indigenous History Month, and the flag recognizing Indigenous peoples will be in place until the end of the month. A commitment to meaningful reconciliation with First Nations includes an endeavor to continue learning. And I appreciate that as individuals, we may be in different places along that journey. And I include this in my liaison report from our library board, as the library can provide a host of resources for people of all ages who want to learn more. And they do have a brochure with resources as well as this being available online. But don't let the wait list for popular materials put you off, because there is one. And a lot of materials are available in digital form. So ebooks as well as audio books and also visual items. So that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beal. Councillor Martin, would you like to provide your liaison report, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was a homelessness task force, but it's not really. It's to do with housing, but it's all part of the same thing. And we brought this up earlier today. On June 13th, the Oceanside Community Housing Forum was attended by Mary Beal, Sean Wood, Joel Grants, 2 counselors from Qualicum, community people. It was really well done to get a whole idea of what is going on with housing here. And that's why it was set on June 13th. We had Belina students taking notes, and we will get notes on this before UBCM. And that's all part of this. So I was very well pleased about such and the chamber was there, everybody was there, all municipality support groups. So that was excellent. That's all I have to say. It's not really homelessness, it's to do with housing. So I also have another announcement for the Parksville Historical Society, since I'm now the liaison. And it's the 40th anniversary of the Historical Society. It's a big deal. They are an amazing board that have worked tirelessly to improve the Museum and Historical Society. They are launching, starting on the July 6th, 5 events on a Thursday night, and it's on their website, where there'll be different musicians. And the first one is on the 6th of July, and they're having craft beer and artisan pizza there too. So it's not just a Sunday afternoon as they've done in the past. So there's 5 of them this summer, and I will mention the other ones closer to the time at the next council meeting. But the first one is July 6th. There is a charge. They go from 6 to 8 p.m. You can order your tickets at $25 per show online or at the museum. And they are open now, longer hours. They're open from 11 to 5 all days except Tuesday and Wednesday. So they're much more open to the public as time is allowed and interest. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. And I did see that announcements regarding their entertainment, and they have a beautiful site now. If you've seen their new courtyard, it's absolutely fabulous. And I know the first one is featuring, I'm a big fan of David Gogo. Is going to be the first one. I think Sean Carl is next. Valdi is up as well. And Jerry Barnum. Yeah,
Yep.
so a lot of local people as well. David Gogo is of course from Nanaimo, Jerry Barnum is from here as
Right.
well. I think Baldy's from Salt Spring, but all great entertainment in a really fabulous location. So
Yeah.
it's a great event, and if anybody has the opportunity, please check it out. Thank you for those reports, council. Do I have a mover and seconder for the recommendation that pursuant to section, no, sorry, we're going to keep this open. We'd like to now go into special business where we'd like to talk in a open forum session. Sorry? Oh, yes, okay. Yeah, so I'll just announce what it's going to be. It's going to be a just a quick discussion on safety and security concerns regarding Memorial Plaza. We're going to discuss this in open forum because we want the public to be aware of what's going on, and we're going to do a little brainstorming here. So, but we're going to take a 5-minute comfort break and then get right back to it. Thank you. Council, please take your chairs. Thank you. That was my digital bell. You're the one that took a 20-minute comfort break. 20 minutes, Sean. Thank you, council. So if we can reconvene right now, this will be just a discussion. And what we wanted to talk about, I alluded to in emails and so forth. We have a very serious situation that's happening at Memorial Plaza, and it's trickling actually from the Jensen Greenway. And that is with the amount of homelessness and street people, and the other term, I guess, is living rough, have taken to the Jensen Greenway and the Memorial Plaza as their favorite place to hang out, sleeping at night times as well as staying in the daytimes. But what has brought it to attention is that has escalated to such a point this past weekend that literally my phone was, it just never stopped the whole weekend. We had relatives in as well from out of town, and they came downtown Parksville, and they came back and said, what's going on down there? And it was at the Memorial Plaza. I was down there on the Friday personally, and I went through there, and I was frightened for my life because it was such a group that had gathered there. And then somebody recognized me, I guess, and said, that's the mayor. And the comments that came back to us was like, wow, this is Parksville. I was so upset. We're at the point now, we're at a crisis situation here. So council, I'm putting it up to you, like, in the past, as you know, I've had fairly strong opinions of the street disorderliness and what should be done about it. And perhaps I proceeded on some pathway that was in agreement with all of council. So I'm here now to get your suggestions of what you feel we have to do it. The public are furious. Our downtown businesses are furious. There's people that are going to be pulling their businesses out of the downtown area after we spent all that money on Memorial Plaza to make it a place for our community. It has been absolutely taken over by the rough living branches. And I won't go into detail because it's too disgusting to even discuss at this point. What I can tell you is items of the Memorial Plaza are being destroyed. They're being ripped up. The boards for the benches are being ripped up. There's graffiti in places where you wouldn't believe. Any amenity that is there is being broken. And the plantings have been pulled out, and it's just on and on. But it's more the threatening behavior and the total lack of decorum that has occurred there that has made Memorial Plaza the last place any of our community wants to be. Jensen Greenway, you know, was just been a terrific idea with the walkway along our community garden that I'm so proud of. And yet it's turned into just a overnight sleeping area. It is the designated area for using drugs openly, as well as the obscenities that are screamed at people on the way by, and people are feeling threatened. Our communities is under siege. Council, what do you feel would be a good way to address this situation? Councillor Bill.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a question for our CAO. I seem to recall that earlier in this council, we did approve funds for a consultant to put together a plan or make recommendations regarding security And at the time, I recalled that the plan or the wish was to expand it beyond the needs of the community park to include also other areas of, that are owned by the city, specifically Memorial Plaza and perhaps some other areas. So I would like to know where that particular plan is, and is it already underway? And do we expect to hear, can we expect to get the results of that anytime soon if it is underway?
Thank you, Councillor Beal, and CAO Kaler, if you can elaborate regarding, and for the public that may be listening, there is a plan in place for non-occupation in some certain areas, the community park and the beach were identified as well. If you could elaborate on that and then where that is right now.
Yeah, thanks. This doesn't work very well. So, yes, if I may, through the mayor. So to back up, before we talk about the SEPTED plan that Councillor Beal is referring to, the city of Parksville has a unique set of regulations that came in around 2016 in light of court decisions that allowed people to stay overnight in public areas and to erect shelter for the protection of their life with different weather conditions. And those shelters are permitted to be up between the hours of 7 and 9 in all public spaces. So that includes parks, roads, plazas, city hall steps, any public area. And that came out of many, I would say, different cities trying to deal with the situation that we're dealing with now. And the Supreme Court of Canada has since confirmed that right for people who may be unhoused, that they can access public spaces for that life-sustaining purpose. So in the city of Parksville, we took a fairly unique approach right from the beginning, where we kind of took a land use approach, and we decided that when we look at the types of uses that are occurring in certain parks, given the timeline for folks being allowed to stay in a shelter, a tent, or what have you, until 9 a.m., what are the areas that have the most significant conflict with that particular use? And so we developed a bylaw with our legal counsel, going as far as we thought we could. And there's a whole bunch of legal principles, which I won't bore anyone, probably only Councillor Grenz cares about that, basically we had to not be overbroad. We had to make sure it was a reasonable intrusion on people's rights, and we had to balance fairness with that particular bylaw. So what that has is we have 3 parks where there is no overnight accommodation permitted at all. The community park, Springwood, and the wetlands, I believe, or whatever, Parksville wetlands, that was added when we acquired that property. Every other park has regulations. So you're not allowed to be in a certain distance of a playground or a planting or a trail or washrooms, those kinds of things. The reasons why we brought those in is because people start arriving to our parks to play ball or to attend events, to play soccer, whatever it may be, at 7:30 quite often. And what we were hearing was that the people sleeping on a field or sleeping in an area, where people were accessing the space for another use, there was a conflict. And so we've been successful in that. The other thing that we did was, because our foreshore is in the environmentally protected area pursuant to provincial legislation, it's also difficult to access, and that it's sloped and treed and doesn't have a lot of emergency access. The area within 60 meters of the foreshore is also, you're not allowed to put an overnight shelter there. So we kind of took that approach that we identified priority areas for health and safety and land use conflict reasons where you could not be. So the challenge that we have is that if you start adding everywhere to that list, then it becomes overbroad and it won't hold up if we get a court challenge. And at the time, it was very popular for certain nonprofit groups to challenge local governments, pro bono. I'm sure you've all heard of some of those, like Pivot Legal or whatever. And one of our counselors at the time was actually concerned, I guess. And so they forwarded what we were doing to Pivot Legal, and they still said, no, there's nothing really wrong with your approach. So we've not had any successful challenge of our regime. So then the other thing that we do, at 9 o'clock, we have 4 bylaw officers. They work different shifts so that we do have coverage every day of the week. In the summer months, 2 of our officers move to more, well, it's not really evening, but it's 10 to 6. And then we have coverage Monday to Friday, 8 to 4. So they overlap so that we have, I think Wednesday and Thursday are one of the days off for the weekend shift. And then we work with the police. The police have been doing day walking patrols and bike patrols, both at night and during the day in priority areas. And so a number of councillors have identified areas that they wanted to see. So that includes Jensen Greenway, the community park. There was an issue near Springwood in the parking area, and there's 4. So community park, Memorial, Jensen, and Springwood. So those areas are sort of marked as high priority for the RCMP, with the caveat that they have 4 people on staff or on shift most of the time, and they extend a very large area. And so the bike patrols in the evening we think are particularly helpful because they can get into places where vehicles can't go. And if they see someone in those prohibited areas, they will request that they move along. And they just keep doing that until eventually people get the message and don't feel super happy staying there and being woken up or, agitated with that. At 9 a.m. every morning, we have bylaw officers going to certain areas to encourage people they have to take down the shelter. They don't have to leave the area. That's not something we can legally mandate. And the challenge that we face there is that our bylaw officers are encountering situations that they're not medically equipped to deal with, or that they're not psychologically necessarily that anyone really wants to deal with. But they're doing their best to work with the social service providers that we have, which I would say is quite limited. There's really no emergency response. There's no outreach workers that we're able to connect with. But we do try to give people advice on where they can go for help if they ask or want that. And we do our best to just encourage compliance. If somebody is blocking an area with a cart or equipment or whatever, we are able to make them remove it. And if they don't, then we usually wait we've had some advice that we want to wait a certain period of time, a few hours at least, to give the person time to come back and retrieve. So normally a typical thing would be if we saw something, say at 10 a.m. And it appears abandoned, the officer on the next go around will see if it's still there. And if it's 2 o'clock in the day and it's still there and looks abandoned, we do remove it. And unless there's a note on it, or the odd time someone does leave a note saying something has happened and they're on their way back or whatever. And most of the folks that are in town, our bylaw officers know. Obviously new people do come in every now and then, but so that's pretty much what we do, is I would say chasing people around a little bit. The CEPTED reports, it's for 2 areas. It's for Memorial and for the community park. And I just checked in with staff. We have a consultant identified, but they've not been able to get to our work yet. So I don't have a timeline of when we'll have the report back. But in the interim, we've had a couple of things come from the experts from RCMP or from our staff, where we have removed the electrical outlets from Memorial to try and discourage people from connecting to them. We do focus on Memorial. We're there several times a day with the different officers. We've done patrols along Jensen multiple times with police and our bylaw team, and the bylaw team is there several times a day.
Sorry, if I can, sorry, CAO Keller. Councillor Gore already identified that he has another appointment that he has to go to. So stay here, please. Councillor Gore, I'll just ask for your comments before you have to go. I know you identified. Sorry.
No, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it. And thank you, CAO, for providing that detailed background information for the council and the public. I think it's very useful. I do want to make a note, a couple of things that, yes, mental health, addictions, poverty, like it is a reality of our society. Most cities are facing that. What's happening is that is affecting the livelihoods of all the businesses. And the access of the public. So it has spread and become a big problem. All the compassion in the world for the homeless and people trying to get their life back together. But I think the traditional approaches or the last, I don't know for how many years we're seeing, the approaches have not worked. We like different cities, province-wide and Canada-wide, like, I don't know. It just seems to exacerbate the issues. Today, we discussed the treatment center, and I'm pleased to see that there's a step in the right direction. I really feel for the businesses, like I really feel that because that's the people's livelihoods at stake and also community members trying to access those amenities that the businesses provide. I truly wish I had a magic wand to give the homeless homes, perfect homes and the treatments that they deserve and the need and the businesses for all the businesses and money and whatever that they require to thrive in our society. But it is a very complex issue, and I want to thank the mayor and the council, Councillor Wood, for putting it forward for the council to sit down and discuss it on a priority basis. So I don't know. Thank you for the opportunities to make some philosophical comments, but I wish I had a solution. I'm open to what the other council members have to say.
Yeah, and my point being basically is that before you leave anyways, like we've identified Memorial and Jensen Greenway. So what should we do? Do you have that magic wand that makes people, you can make them disappear and they end up in Disneyland? I mean, that would be great. Sorry? Oh, yes, yeah, you had to vote. And that's it. But, that's why I want more discussion as to ideas to move these people along. Unfortunately, we recognize that we can't, as a city, provide the health, satisfy the health requirements that they have. We certainly, and I know our bylaw compliance officers go out of their way to identify needs that they do, and they do it in a very compassionate manner as well to help them. And it's more of a get to know them routine. But our problem is that we've had is like in the last 3 weeks, maybe it's the good weather, or maybe it's just that they discovered what a great place Memorial Plaza is. There's a huge influx. It's a huge influx of new people we don't know. And we know something from past experience that if you allow some to get away with using a particular area, they will attract more and more. And it's a question of predator and prey. It will congregate because one attracts the other. And and that's where we're at right now. We're at a I've been saying for, Parksville has been discovered, everybody. We're the new location, but unfortunately, everyone has discovered that Parksville is the new, destination to be at. And so we have to protect those people that have chosen Parksville to be their community to work and also to live.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that sometimes the rights, as our CAO Kaler said, the rights of the unhoused some supersede the rights of the already people living in the community. And that is, we had a lady appear at a council meeting in her 90s. And she just said, you have to stop this. Like we have someone like that. It's like what I refer to in our community as an outer of they have way more knowledge than we have because we're so much younger, some of us. And so that's all part of it. We have to address, we never came up with a solution. She left here unsatisfied with, what are you going to do about it? She said on the way out. We have not replied.
If I may, Mr. Mayor, if we were able to come up with a solution, I think all the hundreds of municipalities across Canada will be watching us, what we did. But I think perhaps through businesses, or if it's there's more foot traffic along Memorial, when we see more people using it. I don't know if we allow businesses to set up something on the sidewalks where it's, there's more public access to it. I think that will discourage some of the folks to just hang around because it's so secluded. It's like a perfect location. Nobody's bothering anybody. It's one-way street now. So it kind of, I think, attracts those unhoused folks to just hang out there and take shelter.
Thank you. You're excused. I know you had to go, but sorry, CEO Kaler. I'll go back. We had a time sensitive there. I probably stopped you mid-sentence.
If I may, I think I was done. I mean, we did
Okay.
also bring in a bylaw to regulate panhandling as well. The previous council brought that in. And so I guess just to maybe for the folks that don't know this, we're the lowest level of government in terms of authority. Everything we do is delegated from senior levels of government. And so we must follow the rules of the Supreme Court of Canada's decisions and then other things that come to us, from our legislation. And so we do not provide social services. That's not our purview. We don't have that expertise. And really, we're just chasing the problem around town. So.
Councillor Fraz?
Sure, yeah, I'll comment there. I'm not totally surprised by what's going on here, and I'm actually more surprised that if anyone is surprised by what's going on, because we were told in the winter that we were seeing the activity levels that we would normally see in the summertime happening early on, and that we could anticipate that it was going to ramp up here. I think it's similar to what we had heard earlier today, that we don't solve problems like housing, affordability, and so on, but we can make them worse. And I think there's often, as we try to alleviate one problem, it's the yin yang, we get the consequences off the other side. So I think a lot of this is a fallout of us trying to resolve other issues through the winter time, like having temporary shelters. And if we do things like try to bring full-time shelters, sorry, but this is the kind of, there's many groups of people that access it, and the predators come along with them as well. So we have to be very cautious about when we're trying to bring these kind of temporary solutions that would have long-term consequences. I think you can look at neighboring communities and ask, like, what is Qualcomm doing so well that they're not dealing with these same kind of problems? And that's, I think, the direction to go.
Thanks, Councillor Fraz. Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Is there a place where that we could send these people to that is our own land, like Parksville's land, so that they would just be in that area? An idea was by the railway tracks there that we own, Parksville owns some land. I'm talking about emergency situation here.
Yes.
We have to do something. It can't just go on like this for the whole summer.
And
You
I
understand what I'm saying?
I can address what you just said,
Yeah.
the railway lands, they're already there.
Oh, well, then maybe the rest of them should go up there.
Yeah, it was, but it was in a very, like, a large manner, like there's pickup trucks actually dropping off supplies. Yeah, it kind of shocked me, and is the Potter's Guild still there? I don't. But I agree. So unfortunately, Parksville is very small. Our land mass is very small, and the amount of Parksville property that we own is also very small. So it's all we've had this discussion before a couple of councils ago when we said, what neighborhood is suitable? There is no neighborhood that's suitable in Parksville. We don't have any place that can deal with this situation. We're just far too small. We're too compact. And so there is no neighborhood that would not be severely impacted by this. And as council, I don't think we have the right to say, we think it's going to be in this area or in this area. Unless you've already got prior approval from that particular neighborhood that they feel that's socially acceptable, that is a consequence that they're willing to accept in their neighborhood. I have been around for a couple councils now. Councillor Fraz has been around for a couple councils. If we could identify an area that this could be housed and where they could be housed and actually receive the services that they need, we would have jumped on it a long time ago, and we would have saved many hours of tossing and turning at night. So I'll let Councillor Joel Grens had his hand up, and then Councillor Beal next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you to council. One action step that I would propose is that we ask the RCMP representation to come before council to have a discussion about their role in this challenge. We are in a situation now where we are in a new era in British Columbia where we have decriminalized possession of drugs. And so this is actually a new situation. And in my informal discussions with RCMP members, they have told me that this is that decriminalization has removed one tool that they have in order to ask people to move along. So previously, a member could encounter someone who's causing trouble. They're not doing anything illegal except for they are doing illegal drugs. And in that situation, they could say, please move along or I'll have to arrest you for possession of illegal drugs. And it's very rare that they, like many people talked about, it's very rare that they would actually ever arrest anyone for even before decriminalization. But it was a tool that gave them an excuse to ask the person to move along. In fact, we have a similar bylaw in the books around use of alcohol in public spaces, not because we're trying to futilely, in my opinion, get people to stop drinking alcohol in public spaces. It's just a tool that if someone becomes unruly due to alcohol, we can say, bylaw or whoever law enforcement can say, please move along. Or I'll have to charge you with something. It's not because I want to have to make you pay for a ticket or I want to have to penalize you. It's a reason it's a valid reason to get someone to move along. So as a council, we do have the option to potentially put into place something that other municipalities are considering, Nanaimo being one. Kamloops has been exploring this. A number of municipalities have been exploring the idea of putting a bylaw restrictions around use of substances in addition to alcohol. And that is an option before us. I have contemplated potentially bringing that as a notice of motion. I have spoken a little bit with our CAO around the idea and members of council. Prior to that, though, I would suggest that we should have a formal discussion with RCMP around that idea, because their job is then to use this tool if we provide it. One more thing I'll add is that I am a little concerned in my discussion with RCMP that they currently have decided, I don't know why or what the background is on this, and so I very much would like to know that they seem to have a policy of not necessarily applying the law. And the specific example of this is I was told that they will not be enforcing trespassing laws without the consent of the owner of the property, which to me seems a little bit strange, because if my neighbor's property was trespassed on while they're on vacation and someone decided to take up residence there or whatever, I should be able to report that and expect the police to enforce that trespassing, whether or not the neighbor is cooperating with that. But I've seen now one example, and I've heard of others where, and it was also relayed to me by the member, that they are not actually enforcing trespassing laws without express consent from the owner of the property. So I'd love to talk to them about that to understand why that is the case. Because if each of us aren't doing our job in this challenge, then it doesn't work. And I would say that the police has a responsibility to enforce the law. The judges have the responsibility to sentence based on various factors that they take into consideration, the background and all that. But that is not the job of the police. That's the job of the judge at sentencing. So I'd love to have that conversation.
Thank you, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And picking up on comments made by Councillor Grenz, I certainly also would be concerned that there does seem to be a gap there, because the drugs, certain drugs are still, they are illegal. It may have been decriminalized, but that is not the same thing as legalization. And I understand that some of the people who are out there using them don't seem to understand that distinction. So it does seem to me that there should be some way that the RCMP could in fact use that to apply some sort of, to help with maintaining order. Beyond that, though, I would really like to thank and acknowledge the work of our bylaw officers, because, I actually got the impression that it was a lot better along Jensen now for quite a while. I do semi-regularly run and walk down there, and it may be the time of day. Usually it's the evening, but sometimes it's earlier in the day. And it's been extremely quiet, and in fact, nobody hanging about. Whereas earlier there would be groups of people in different spots. So So I'm really pleased to see what they've been doing there. But like I say, it may just be the luck of the draw when I'm going by that, that there isn't anyone there. And in fact, there's often no one hanging about at the end of the little pathway at Evergreen towards Thrifty's. And that always used to be very busy as well. Now, some of that may also be with the building that's going up adjacent to that. So that should help. I'm very concerned about the situation on Memorial. And yes, but in addition to hearing from the RCMP, there was a mention that there's no outreach worker, et cetera. But I do understand that there is an outreach worker connected perhaps to the task force on homelessness or the host team. Like, I'm not sure actually who has the outreach worker attached to them, if it's Orca Place, ICCS, or who, but there is an outreach worker in the area who is interacting with a number of people who are homeless. And I would love to hear from that person as well. Any insights that we might have in addition to the RCMP, to hear from the members of the task force as to thoughts as to what might help alleviate the situation, improve the situation. So it just seems that we should get insights and information from all groups that who are working with this, Salvation Army, perhaps, I don't know, others. Like, if there's something that we can do, if you can't dissuade people just by that, then maybe there is something else that would be a more an attractive alternative that's less disruptive to the downtown area.
I heard the request of Sylvia or Councillor Martin. Would it be possible to reach out to either the task force or OCATs or whatever your liaison to ask if there is an outreach worker like assigned to Oceanside or Parksville area? If there is an individual and where that's administered by, is it through the SOS? Or is it through their other agency that was running the VIP location? Maybe it's there. I don't know, because they had some outreach workers. But if we could get that person, and is it a possible tool that our bylaw compliance officers would be able to use if they knew actually who the outreach worker was? Yeah, just as an action item. Go ahead, Mary. Councillor Bill.
I'd just like to add that I know this is a few years ago now, but my understanding was that Powell River, that the city there actually hired or, set up an outreach worker or outreach team. I'm not sure how many, and that really helped their situation at the time. So I'm just wondering if there are some other examples of that, and that was better at building relationships and minimize the street disorder.
Yes, and to answer part of your question, I know that Nanaimo has at least 2 or 3 now. A dozen, do they? Yeah. Yeah, and they are outreach workers. When we were at our CAO, Kaylor and I were at the RCMP conference meeting that we had all day, and they were all over Diana Crowell Plaza, and they drive trucks like BCO officers, only they're specially equipped and specially trained for that. They're also a population of Nanaimo is what now? Oh, just over 100,000 now. So, and that comes with a huge cost, and it's alarming. So, but yes, I like, and it is making inroads. Anyways, I'm going to go to Councillor Wood now for his remarkable ideas.
You said setting the bar very high there, Mayor. Thank you. A couple of thoughts. Yes, we had a temporary shelter this winter, but I remember a tent city across from the fire hall long before we opened that shelter this winter. So I don't think, what happens every winter when the snow flies and we care about housing people, I don't think that necessarily snowballs into what we're seeing this summer. I think this is a huge issue that Nanaimo has. I don't know what their point in time count is. It's getting close to 1,000 homeless, and Mayor Krogh is pulling his hair out. And he was an NDP MLA, and even his contacts in Victoria are not immediately helping to solve the problems that he is tired of hearing about, because he wishes he had solutions. It is a very big deal. When I read emails from a business owner and they're dealing with a midday overdose, which was attended by the fire department, a machete wielding altercation for which we called RCMP, Several people seated passed out on our business walkway as my staff and myself are leaving 5:30 p.m. on Thursday. Pieces of broken glass, drug paraphernalia on the boulevard where we walk our dogs. And today, Sunday, a pile of what appears to be a pair of jeans covered in smeared feces just outside the front door of our clinic. Businesses are how we pay for everything. That is what makes all of our healthcare systems and everything go around. And when businesses are losing business because of this, that is a downward spiral that we do not want to go down. I would ask questions through our CAO to our director of housing or our director of mental health and addictions or our director of health, but we don't have those. The provinces have ministries of mental health and addictions. They have ministries of housing and ministry of health. And the municipalities are imploring these leaders to help keep our businesses intact. And I watch a lot of Nanaimo meetings, and for them to possibly lose an anchor store like London Drugs or Thrifty's down at the Port Place Mall will have huge effects on their economy. And so the way we pay for all of our healthcare and the way we pay for all of our compassion is for businesses to continue to make money. That is how the whole thing works. Without those businesses making money, this doesn't continue in the way that we have traditionally seen it. So all of this is way beyond what municipalities can do. And I implore those ministries to bring municipalities solutions, because this is what your expertise is in. Bring us solutions so that we can vote on things to get things done in our municipalities. Thank you.
I'm just going to throw back, I have a question for CAO Kaler here. I'll wind it up because people do have to go. But CAO Kaler, is there a way that we could identify Memorial Plaza and the Jensen Greenway as we put it, as an area where we are police and our bylaw compliance officers will move people along? And you say they have to have someplace to go. Well, when people are moved along from an area like this, a very public area, they find other areas to locate. And, if you look hard, you'll find them. And, whether it's under that table or whether it's under that bus shelter, they move on. And that is unfortunately, I hate to say it, but is a better solution to where they're camped out at than being in a very, very public place. So is there any way we can say that Jensen Greenway, Memorial Plaza, our people and our expertise with the RCMP, and that's all we have, the RCMP and our bylaw compliance, move these people along, for lack of a better term? See if CAO Taylor can answer that, or can you answer that? Yeah, and Councillor Fraz wants to add to my question. You can write on to my question.
Yeah, just on that topic too, when we look at the Elizabeth Manor Treatment Center, I think some of the province should be aware about is if they're serious about bringing something like that to our area as a regional area, and it's going to be for an island-wide thing. I mean, that's the epicenter between Jensen Greenway, Memorial. I do think they should recognize that our downtown core, I would say more than just those two areas, but our city then I think needs to be identified as a sensitive area for that, because if they're serious about having treatment, how are people going to walk out their door and not be accosted by this kind of exact thing that they're trying to avoid? So.
And Councillor Fraz mentioned it before, like unlike our neighboring municipality to the extreme west or north of us, how did Parksville become ground zero? And that's the question we have asked for a long time. But anyways, back to you, CAO.
Thank you. If I may, through you, I can't answer that question.
Yes. Is it something that you could explore the possibilities of?
Yeah, definitely. So what we've done in the past is just focus on areas with what we call a blitz. So we just are there every day. We're there 4 times a day. We're there regularly. We do the same thing all the time. And that's actually, I do agree with Councillor Beal. There has been some improvements along Jensen because eventually people just get sick of hearing from our bylaw guys. We've done that many times. We had Sutherland as a big problem before, and so we moved folks around from there. We had Marks Park was a big problem before. We moved people around from there. We've had the community park be a big problem. We've focused on that and moved people from there. We had an area up behind Buckerfields in the city part, and then they moved to the RDN. So like we are just like following the problem around town and moving people from one place to another. And, our staff will continue to do that. We'll definitely look into whether there's, like, we've tried in the past to put in anti-loitering. I think yourself and Councillor Frass were on council when what became the panhandle regulation started out as a anti-loitering, anti-panhandle, ban everything. And we worked with our legal counsel to go as far as we could go within the jurisdiction that we're delegated, the authority that we're delegated, and being mindful of the Constitution, which is a very challenging thing for us to infringe on for any reason. And so we'll certainly touch base back again. This was a huge topic. I was at LGMA last week, and this was talked about the entire time by every CAO, every person that was there. I mean, we're not alone, but that I think does mean that somebody needs to come up with some solutions that we can enact, because we don't have the power at this level of government except for advocacy and pressure. We are so limited in the legal tools that we can use. And I believe our RCMP officers are limited even more in the tools they can use. And the province or senior levels of government have to give us guidance on how far we can go with things. Like even putting in a regulation to say that you can't use drugs in the park, which seems to make a lot of common sense or good sense. There are many cities who are not able to do that and who are being challenged. And my advice to Councillor Grenz and some other councillors is that we wait, let other people take the legal steps, and we will then follow on what happens there, because we don't have the population or the tax base to do some of these more expensive solutions that honestly aren't really working. I was just in the city of Nanaimo the other day, and I saw 12 people using drugs in one block, and other things that I would not want to walk by necessarily with my kids. So I don't, even with the amount of money and the amount of resources that the city of Nanaimo has, it hasn't really made that much of a visible impact to me as a person walking in their downtown. But we'll certainly look into anything we can do to strengthen a bylaw or designate that area maybe as a non-overnight accommodation area, with the caution that if you add everything to the list, then you're going too far. So there is a balancing or a tipping point there, but we'll definitely look into that and ask our legal team for some advice.
I would just, I agree. Thank you for that. That we should push that edge. We should push that edge anyways at this point and just identify, like, Memorial Plaza is a health issue. It's a health and safety issue. And it really is. People eat their lunches there, and when they can. And so, I mean, as Councillor Wood described in far too greater detail that we want to hear. That's the reality, is that you end up, sitting beside someone else's extreme mess. So that's a health issue. And so we identify health issues as a city, and it's not acceptable. So I think exactly that, if we can push that edge and moving along, that's what we do. And obviously this is more discussions to happen. It's just very helpful to have this discussion to let the people know we're not sleeping here. We know what's going on. Okay, carry on. Yes.
Sorry, if I may, through council, if I could make a suggestion, yourself and Councillor Frass might remember this too, but prior to COVID, we had actually arranged, we had many stakeholders that were mentioned today by Councillor Beal and others. We were going to do a town hall on sort of social issues and safety issues. And it was, I think, scheduled for March 20th or something. So the world shut down and we weren't able to proceed. But we could reinvestigate that, find the same stakeholders. We had quite a few, like a dozen people signed up for that event. And it was really with the purpose of trying to address solutions on bringing everyone together, having the public come in as well, and just really having a dialogue. And so I think if council thinks that would be helpful, we could find that list and update it and figure out who's the right person now. But I think getting back to our sort of engagement with the community, those were helpful things that we used to do before COVID. So if council wished to make a resolution on that, we could.
My only comment on that, CEO Kaler, is the fact is only if the stakeholders are bringing solutions.
Yeah.
But the thing is that what happens on many of these town hall items, we always hear of the stories. And I get the stories, and I really do. And it's not that I want to disregard the stories. But if we have a town hall and we have something like that, it's just like, what can you bring to the table? What can we do legally to solve this problem? But, I don't know that those people with all the answers exist. Maybe there's somebody that has a couple little things that we can piece together. I know the PDVA, not that they're in the room, but the PDVA actually are looking into a safety issue meeting and so forth. That they're working with their people as well, which I'm sure they'll share the results with all of us. So those groups are doing it as well. I know tourism also was doing it when I spoke to the tourism group, and the chamber has a new Amiri, anyways, is a new CAO. I had a great conversation with him the other night, anyways, and we will work together. And he's identifying these same common issues as we learn. So I think that's good. I think we should wrap up. Everyone's getting a little tired. Mary, I know, Councillor Beal, you had your hand up before. Did you have anything that you wanted before we shut down?
Yeah, not that I think that it would be worth sharing at this time, but at a future date, I'm hoping that Councillor Martin could speak with the recent visit to Duncan and, you know, how that went as well. That's something that they're trying some things there, and some seem to be you know, quite successful, or at least positive thus far. So just at a future date.
Thank you very much, Council, for sticking around extra long anyways. And we're trying to brainstorm here, and I appreciate all of your ideas. And yeah, we've got some work to do. Let's get to it. Could I get a mover and a seconder for adjournment, please? That would be moved by Councillor Wood,